How are you feeling?
Well,
How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
Could you give me some idea?
I am not completely like other people.
What do you mean by that?
People dislike me because I am not completely like them. I am trying to do with my life something which few people try to do, and this influences my thinking and consequently my action.
What is it you're trying to do with your life?
Play the piano for people.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.
what's inside my head of crying people facing death. Is this the end? Is this the end? Oh, I'm burning in the dystopia. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the dystopia. This is the final time. What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in the dystopia. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the dystopia. This is the final
Who the fuck is Karlyn? She's just some sweet lady. She's like in a knitting. She does like a knitting stream. She's like a knitting YouTuber. She does knitting.
Can we grow up a little bit and
Alt
not
Girl
be
sent $200.
retarded?
Have you
Please.
seen the work of Karlyn Borysenko? Anti-commie cult leader and is obsessed with looking at what actual far-left communists are talking about and organizing today, infiltrating them. They infiltrated the universities, schools, media. She has the receipts to back it up. Primary source evidence. Infestation is dire and she calls Republicans idiots eating slop. Agree.
Thank you for the big super chat. Yeah, oh, I know Karlyn B. She's solid. She's funny. I
The
like
great
her.
noticer sent $200.
Literally.
So
not
it's,
Ian.
it's not a because I haven't dangled my junk into the combat zone on purpose to get some camera footage, but that's the big part of what's the
Is
problem.
that what you call reporters?
Go
and live
under if
streaming?
you're going to do it.
Yeah,
go
seriously.
undercover. Otherwise, you're wearing a hunk of meat in a lion's den. Nick Shirley, I love you. Take care of yourself, man. Karlyn Borysenko went undercover. Do stuff like that. Like if you want to expose this thing, don't pariah.
But
Please.
Ian, here's and I agree with you to an extent.
I watch these streams, and I've been watching a self-professed fascist named Karlyn, who drinks and basically roasts these live streams. But weirdly, she has apparently embedded herself with Antifa before, and so it's such a funny stream because
So they tolerate her?
oh no, not anymore. She no. She's like, I mean, I don't know if she's trolling or not, but on her stream, she's like, I am a fascist.
Right.
So she's proudly proclaiming she's a fascist. I don't know how much of that is trolling, how much of it is real, but conservatives who are drawn to her stream will say things like, these people are funded by George Soros. And it's the funniest thing because she gets so mad. And she's like, get off fucking Fox News. Stop watching that shit. It's all wrong. Do these people look funded? Do these people look like they have money? They're not funded. It's so, and I guess her bigger point is by saying these are funded agitators and not saying what they actually are, which is anti-capitalist revolutionaries, you dilute what's really happening. Because what's really happening, according to her, and I think a fair amount of people, is that the economy is so fucked. The middle class is diminishing so much. The cost of living is so high that this is the perfect soil you need if you wanted communism to grow anywhere.
Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum braucht er was zum Essen, bitte sehr. Es macht ihn ein Geschwätz nicht satt, das schafft kein Essen her.
Drum links, 2, 3, drum links, 2, 3, wo dein Platz genossen ist, weil ich ein Genial, weil der Einheitsgrund, weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum hat der Stiefel im Gesicht nicht gern. Er will unter sich keinen Sklaven sehen und über sich keinen Herrn.
Drum links, 2, 3, drum links, 2, 3, wo dein Platz genossen ist, weil ich ein Genial, weil der Einheitsgrund, weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Prolet ein Prolet ist, drum wird ihn kein anderer befreien. Es kann die Befreiung der Arbeiter nur das Werk der Arbeiter sein.
Drum links, 2, 3, drum links, 2, 3, wo dein Platz genossen ist, weil ich kein Genial, weil der Einheitsgrund, weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Здравствуйте, comrades. Welcome to Socialism Saturday. Socialism Saturday is when we watch the real far left, the furthest of the far left, the most dystopian of the dystopian. We are not watching Democrats, liberals, progressives on Socialism Saturday because Democrats and liberals and progressives are not socialists and communists, no matter how many times Elon Musk says it, no matter how many times Donald Trump says it, no matter how many times any right-wing pundit calls the left all liberals. They are not liberals. They are communists and socialists, and they are two different things, and that is all we watch on Socialism Saturday are the real deal. The furthest of the far left, the radical revolutionary socialists who are trying to overthrow our country today. If you want to know who put critical race theory and anti-racist education in schools, it's the people we watch on Socialism Saturday. If you want to know who put gender ideology and queer theory, trans and kids, drag queen story hour into schools, that they're the people we watch on Socialism Saturday. If you want to know who's doing climate justice, Greta Thunberg, flotillas to Palestine, it's the people we watch on Socialism Saturday. If you want to know who's abolished the police, defund the police, protesting out in front of the ICE facilities right now, literally, it's the people that we watch on Socialism Saturday. I show you the origin point of every crazy idea in the country today. You do not see the content that I cover on Socialism Saturday anywhere else on the internet except when they're stealing it from me, which does absolutely happen. Did you guys know there are people who watch Socialism Saturday, like literally just to steal clips from me because they can't do their own work and their own research? They have to come here to find it because we watch the things that no one else is watching. And that is why we are weeks, months, or even years ahead of the curve sometimes when it comes to what is going on the far left. And Cynthia is starting us off strong today. Love you, my dear. Thank you for those 5 gifted channel memberships. Congrats to everyone who got a channel membership from Cynthia. That's awesome. It's just a $2 match me, people. Yeah, guys, this is actually a great idea. Everyone throw in $2 right now. Literally, everyone throw in $2 right now. That would be fucking awesome. It's just $2. Everyone throw in $2 right now. The vast majority of my content is free on the internet. In fact, let me show you guys. If you head over to my Substack, That is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. And you click this new to my work button. I have a whole bunch of free stuff here. I have 3 free classes that will get you up to speed on the far left. We have my re-education class. That is a 90-minute class that walks you through the best clips that I've ever gotten at the trainings and that we've been recording for years. Grandma Nay, you're in for the $2. Who else is in for the $2? That is free over on the Substack. If you like that, we've got the 4-hour How to Speak Socialist Masterclass, which goes much more in depth into the radical revolutionary far left. And if you're still looking for more content, we have the hour-long Introduction to Queer Marxism lecture. And I'm able to make all this stuff free and available. And I'm working on making more too. We got Alexa over on Rumble with the gift subscription. Thank you for that. We got Ching on Unlimited. Thank you for the $5. Appreciate it. We got Ryoku. Good evening. Thank you. Thank you. I love this idea. Just throw in $2 at the door. Except if you're someone like Reagan. Reagan doesn't have to pay anything because Reagan does so much work for me that like I can never repay her for all the stuff she's done. So Reagan is gratis. Okay. Reagan and Bod and a couple other people. You guys can be here for free if you want. I don't really care. You guys do way more than your fair share. Class dues. Reagan is like my TA. Reagan is like the TA of the class, and therefore Reagan gets everything for free because Reagan actually teaches you guys and is far nicer than I am. If you guys have to choose between interacting with me and interacting with Reagan, Reagan's going to be way nicer to you. And all that stuff. Filthy angry Irish peasant. Only commies do not donate to our dear leader. Exactly. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you. Awesome. I love this. I love this. The mutual aid tree. Like throw in for the fascist fund. This is the cover charge. You're like, you guys could be going out to a club right now. You could be going out to a club right now. Instead, you're here with me for Socialism Saturday. I think this is great. We got No Mayos in there. We've got Ella in there. Awesome. Awesome. And did I ever I haven't sent Reagan the free t-shirt yet. I still owe Reagan free merch for my merch store. But to be fair, I'm like I haven't. There's so much stuff that needs to be done in the merch store. It's not funny. I'm sorry, Reagan. I failed you on the fucking t-shirt aspect again. I promise you that eventually one day you will get your merchandise. I promise you. And when I send it, I'm going to send way more than the stuff you asked for because you only asked for a couple things, and I'm going to send you way more stuff than that. And it's going to be awesome. And I promise I will do it at some point. I promise it'll happen. I promise it'll happen at some point. Casmar! See, Reagan knows I never do anything on time, but she knows I always get to it eventually. Oregon born, thank you for the $2 for my queen. Thank you, Tolkien fan. Thank you. Thank you. See, I know. See, we have an understanding. All right. We have an understanding. Cynthia, 2 more for the Cynthia, thank you so much for that. Look at this, guys. Look at this. Is perfect. Look at this. Thank you. Awesome. Oh, this is great. We're going to start implementing this. $2 on your way in the door to Socialism Saturday because we're doing the work that no one else does. Hey, I want to introduce you guys to someone, if you've never met her before, far left professor Imam Abdelhadi, charged with violent felonies after the Chicago ICE riots. We have been watching Imam Abdelhadi for years on Socialism Saturday. This is about a month and a half ago. Thank you for the super sticker, Mackinstood. I really appreciate it. I know I pronounced that wrong. Grandma Nay, thank you. One's in the chat if you have watched Imam Abdelhadi with us before. 2 in the chat if you have not watched Imam Abdelhadi with us before. Cover charge. Thank you, Red Can Rick. I do appreciate that. 1's if you know who Imam Abdelhadi is. 2 if you do not know who Imam Abdelhadi is. We have literally been talking about Imam Abdelhadi for years on this channel. Imam Abdelhadi is one of the people that just comes up over and over and over again. In fact, we were watching ICE protest footage from Chicago a couple months ago, and I spotted Imam Abdelhadi at the ICE facility before she got arrested. Remember, we were all watching that one day? Macau for life over with the $10 over on Rumble. Thank you for that, Rumble. Rant Lady in pink with the super sticker. Thank you. Thank you. Do you guys remember we were watching the protest footage in Chicago one day, and I was like, holy shit, that's Imam Abdelhadi. We spotted her in the crowd at that protest before she got arrested. And so we knew about this woman before anyone else on the internet knew about her because we've been watching her for years. Carol, thank you for the super sticker. I appreciate that. Cool propagation. Thank you for that. I do appreciate it. So Imam Abdelhadi is the co-author of a book that I reference very often, and I would actually like to do a book club with this book when I have the time to do a book club. I mean, like, I have so many things I want to do, but I do eventually want to do a book club with this book. And guess what? We have the PDF of it, so you guys don't even have to buy it. And I would recommend not buying it, because if you buy it, you give money to a socialist press. And as a general rule, socialists don't believe in intellectual property. So if socialists don't believe in intellectual property, I kind of feel like we can just hand out the PDF and that would be fine. Outdoor stickers, thank you for that. Kristen Brown, thank you for that. Thank you for the super sticker, rather. Outdoors. There we go. I pronounced it correctly. Ohio Rizzlers for the fascist fun. Thank you for that. The book Everything for Everyone is a visioning exercise. So when socialists, so you guys know how we always say real socialism hasn't been tried, real socialism hasn't been tried. Okay, they agree. The socialists and communists agree. 7 lilies, shout out Comrade Reagan. Yes, we appreciate Reagan. Everyone W's for Reagan. She didn't even do anything, but you can still, give her a W or give her a high five or give her a heart or whatever. Show your appreciation to Reagan. She does so much for the community. Thank you, Mason, for becoming a member of the channel. I really do appreciate that. Thank you, Tolkien fan, for the gifted membership. We are starting off on fire today. So socialists will agree with you that they say real communism has never been tried, and they're trying to figure out what real communism actually looks like. Pete, thank you for the super chat. You're about to start reading this book. I think it's a great book to read, because when you read Imam Abdelhadi's book, which she co-authored with an Abolish the Family queer communist named Emmy O'Brien, and we also watch Emmy O'Brien all the time on this channel. Emmy O'Brien is like a gift from the universe to us that we just can never repay, because Emmy O'Brien just says so many quiet things out loud. It's actually unbelievable. But the two of them got together and they wrote this book about what the future communist utopia looks like. So this is a book in which they created a bunch of fictional interviews with people from the future communist utopia, looking back on the transition from the overthrow of capitalism into communism and envisioning what that future society looks like. Socialists use sci-fi to do this all the time, but this is one of the most popular books on the left for that particular topic. And so I do want to read it at some point, because it will give us I've skimmed through it personally. I know other people have as well, but like it will give us a really robust idea of here is the world that they are trying to create, and here is how they envision getting there. Thank you, Andy, for that super sticker. I appreciate that. So Imam Abdelhadi is a co-author of this book, and that is why she is very well known on the left. She also is a pro-Palestine protester. We've seen her speak at the Socialism Conference many, many times over. The Socialism Conference is one of the biggest gatherings of far-left revolutionaries every year in the country. It happens in Chicago. So, Imam Abdelhadi is also a professor at the University of Chicago, which, by the way, is an Ivy League school. And Imam Abdelhadi is a professor at that particular Ivy League school. And Imam Abdelhadi is now on her way to being a felon because she was arrested at the Chicago ICE facility and charged with multiple felonies. But before she was arrested at the Chicago ICE facility, Imam Abdelhadi gave an interview, and we watched a different. I had this on the schedule to watch, and we just hadn't gotten to it yet because we chose to watch something else instead. But Imam Abdelhadi gave an interview a couple months ago about achieving queer futures. Dr. Imam Abdelhadi is an academic, activist, and writer who thinks at the intersection of gender, sexuality, religion, and politics. She is an assistant professor and sociologist at the University of Chicago, where she researches American Muslim communities. She is the author of Everything for Everyone, blah, 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 blah. This will tell us what Imam Abdelhadi thinks about what they want to create for queer futures. And regardless of whether she admits this or not, because she doesn't like to admit this woman is deeply influential on the far left. University of Chicago is actually in the Ivy Leagues, bro. You don't know what you're talking about. You literally don't. Bro, seriously. Whatever. I'm not going to argue about that right now. Pete. By the way, I sent your re-education and socialist speak class to book author and a Substack publisher, Dan. Thank you for that, Pete. I do appreciate that. Thank you. Anyway, I'm not going to argue about that right now. Anyway, so Imam Abdelhadi is deeply influential on the far left. A lot of people listen to her. And so if a lot of people on the far left are listening to her, we have to listen to her because we have to know what these people are planning, because that's how we stay ahead of everyone. The professor of felonious activity Indeed. Imam Abdelhadi is a professor of felonious activity. Let me just get my setup going here. So that's what we're going to watch tonight, guys. We're going to be watching Achieving Queer Futures, Imam Abdelhadi in conversation with Nat Rea. I don't know who Nat is, but I think we are probably going to find out. Now, I want I want to know what my audience makeup is like today. One in the chat if this is your first Socialism Saturday ever. 2 in the chat if you are relatively new to Socialism Saturday. You started watching maybe in the last couple months. 3 in the chat if you are a Socialism Saturday veteran and you know what the rules are for Socialism Saturday and you know my expectations and stuff like that. So 1 in the chat if this is your very first Socialism Saturday. 2 in the chat if you're relatively new in the last couple months or so. 3 in the chat if you are a veteran of Socialism Saturday. Let me know what I'm working with here tonight. Lots of 2s in the chat tonight. Holy shit. Lots of 2s in the chat, some 3s, mostly 2s. All right, guys. Socialism Saturday is not like other streams on the internet. Now, we do have fun. We do make jokes and stuff like that, but Socialism Saturday is a class and it is a research stream. We are researching. We are listening deeply to what these people have to say in order to try to understand their language, because socialists may use the same vocabulary as us. They do not use the same dictionary as us. So we want to know what people think in the way that they understand themselves. This is not about owning the libs. This is not about taking things out of context. We listen to the full presentation, we break down the language, and we talk about it. And so this is about educating people about what the real far left actually believes, because all of the crazy stuff, I just told you we weren't going to argue about that, and now you're going into timeout because I told you we weren't going to argue about that. I just put a person in a timeout because they didn't listen to the clear instruction that I gave them. And that's the environment that you're walking into on Socialism Saturday. On Socialism Saturday, you are in my classroom. I'm not in yours. I'm not here to learn from you. You are here to learn from me, and you're here to learn from the people on the stream. If you don't like that hierarchy, then there's the door. You can leave. You don't have to be here. Good luck finding anyone else on the internet that's showing you this sort of thing. But I run my classroom because I do consider this to be my classroom in a very specific way. We run it that way because we know what works. I've been doing this for a long time. And if I allowed all sorts of hooligans and nonsense and shit posting to occur in the chat, we would never get anything done. Okay. So we do have a very specific way we run this. And if you're going to be here, we expect you to listen to the rules. Thank you for the $20 super chat, old sub. I really do appreciate that. And so that's what we're going to do. Now, before we get into it, I do want everyone to watch this quick video that will better explain the rules than I just did. And these are the things that I expect everyone to go along with on Socialism Saturday. So please pay attention to this brief instructional video. And I promise you, if everyone follows the rules as we laid them out on this video, we're all going to have a lot more fun and we're all going to learn a lot more than we would otherwise. All right, listen to the video. All right, for anyone that's new, we have some rules for Socialism Saturday. Let me go over them real quick. Socialism Saturday is a research group and a class. We do take this seriously. You're allowed to have fun. You're allowed to have a drink or two. You're allowed to kind of kick back and joke in the chat. However, I need everyone to understand that when we are researching the radical revolutionary left, we do take this seriously. And so if you're shit posting in my chat, I'm going to tell you to stop. If you are posting off topic in the chat, I'm going to ask you to stop at some point because it's going to be distracting to what we're doing. I need you to think of yourself as in a classroom. And I'm not talking about an online classroom. I'm talking about a real life classroom, okay? When you walk into a real life classroom, I am the teacher, you are the students. You are sitting in the desk, I am sitting in the front of the classroom. I'm standing there teaching you what is going on. If you were in a real life classroom, you wouldn't walk in, start throwing shit at the wall, yelling, saying, I disagree with you because my best friend said something different. That's not allowed. I don't care about your feelings. I'm not going to coddle your opinion. And that's going to be the way it is. And if you don't like it, you don't have to be here. But if you are in my classroom, you will respect my rules and you will listen to me. And if you do not do that, then you will be removed. And how you feel about being removed makes no difference to me at all. The expectation is if you're going to be here and you're going to be watching socialism with us and you're going to be participating in the chat, you are doing it because you are serious about learning this topic and understanding this topic. The minute that I think that you're just fucking around or you're trolling or something like that, you're going to get put in a timeout or permanently banned, and that's just going to be the way it is. Rule number 2, don't be a dick. Do not insult me. Do not insult other people in the chat. I can do whatever I want because I am the queen fascist bitch of my YouTube channel. So I can say and do whatever I want. But if you don't insult me and you don't insult other people in the chat, we're not going to have a problem. So be an adult, rein that shit in. Number 3, no whining. I don't care about your feelings. I don't care if you feel personally attacked. It makes no difference to me at all. And I promise you, I care about your feelings a little bit more than the left does. So if you can't handle me, you can't handle the left. If you start whining and complaining because you don't like the rules or you think you're being treated unfairly, you can just leave, bro. There's the door. You don't have to be here. Number 4, listen. Our job here and why we do Socialism Saturday is to listen to what the left is saying, to listen to what real leftists are doing in the real world. This is not to support your confirmation bias. This is not to support any conservative bullshit narrative that you may have heard on Glenn Beck that one time. This is not to be what you want it to be. This is to engage with reality. We need to listen, we need to actively listen, and we need to understand the left better than they understand themselves. That is the purpose of this exercise, okay? As part of that, I do ask that people refrain from debunking. You do not have a single debunk in your arsenal about the left is stupid because of reasons X, Y, B, and Z, or the left is hypocrites for reasons X, Y, B, and Z. You don't have a single debunk that we haven't heard before, okay? And every time you put energy into debunking, that is energy that you're not putting into listening. So if I see you debunking, I'm going to tell you to stop, because you need to put that energy into listening instead. Lastly, break the rules of my chat or disrespect me in any way, and I'll just kick you out, and that's the way it is. All right, I want to see ones in the chat if you guys agree to the rules of Socialism Saturday. Ones in the chat. We got Kevin Michael here. I just got a job working for QuickBooks. Yay, capitalism. Awesome. I love capitalism. Capitalism is the best, especially when you guys are giving me money. That's awesome. See, Amalek here. Amalek thinks that he gets to have an exception to the rules just because he's devastatingly handsome. So Amalek, whatever, bro, but, rate it in. All right, rate it in. You know what we're doing here. Calm down. My God. All right. Everyone says they agree to the rules. Guys, I do just want to remind people that another way to support my work, in addition to giving me super chats, which I do very, very much appreciate, is by becoming a member of my Substack. That is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. You can head over there and read the Be Queer, Do Terrorism manifesto that literally no one else is talking about. Literally no one else is talking about. This is one of those things where I'm like, conservatives, could they be more clear? The queer Marxist left releases a manifesto literally calling to be queer, do terrorism, and no conservative media will talk about it. Do you guys understand now why we are weeks, months, or years ahead of conservative media? Because when this stuff gets released on the far left, I find out about it almost immediately. I talk about it, and then conservatives get around to it maybe a couple weeks, couple months later, when they feel like it, when they need a good thing to rile up their audiences. But if you are over on the Substack, you already know about the Be Queer, Do Terrorism manifesto and why it's terrifying. And if you guys want to help share this information out on Twitter, it's actually pretty great, because even with no conservative influencer help, we are up to 97,000 views of this document on Twitter. So if you guys want to help us reach 100,000 views of this, hang on, share this. If you guys want to help us reach 100,000 views on this live stream of this document with literally zero influencer help, Andy No won't share this with his audience because it's my journalism, and Andy No refuses to share my journalism because he knows how much better at this I am than he is. But if we all work together and you guys all bookmark this tweet, you all like this tweet, you all reply to it, you all retweet it, you all quote tweet it, I will retweet anyone who quotes this tweet as long as you aren't saying something ridiculous. And we can still get a metric ton of views on this content and tell people what's going on with the help of zero conservative influencers and zero conservative media, because almost none of them actually care about showing the real far left to their audience. Yeah, imagine claiming to be an anti-woke, anti-communist, and the queers released a Be Queer, Do Terrorism manifesto, and literally you're like, no, that's just not enough for me to talk about. Crazy, isn't it? Thank you, 2 ladies, for the 5 gifted channel memberships. I really do appreciate it. Congrats to everyone who got a gifted channel membership from 2 ladies. That is awesome. You broke my cherry and now I'm hooked. Yeah, so that's how it happens, Fizzle. That's how it happens. I have taken so many people's socialism virginities. I have taken so many people's cherries over the years. It's not even funny. And once you get a taste of this, you never go anywhere else, because this is the crazy shit that no one else shows you and that no one else watches. And so, yeah. If I send you a 2-minute queer mutual aid song, will you play it? Yes. Yes, Reagan, I will. But please remind me at the end if I forget. I'm going to put a star on this, and I will obviously make sure to look for that on Twitter. But if you send it to me, I will absolutely play it. That's awesome. Yep, my stuff doesn't fit with the it's Soros funding them narrative. So true. So true. All right, guys, we got all our orders of business out of the way. Please make sure you have mounted the like button if you have not already. If you don't feel like mounting the like button, give the like button a high five, shake the like button's hand, give the like button a kiss on the cheek, give the like button a slap on the ass. Do whatever you want to the like button, but just do something to it. Please make sure you are subscribed to the channel if you're not already. And let's dig into it. We are listening to Imam Abdelhadi talk about achieving queer futures.
To Archiving Queer Futures, an online event from Lavender Menace, a queer literature and community archive based in Edinburgh.
Not achieving. Archiving. I can't read. Not achieving. Archiving. I have a PhD. Remember that? I have a PhD. Sometimes I can't read words, but I do in fact have a PhD. All right, let's go.
We are so excited to be joined by Eman, Abdelhadi, and Nat Raha tonight. So if you're not obsessed with their work already, you can pick up copies of the books they talk about from Lighthouse Edinburgh's Radical Bookshop. So we are recording this event, but only our speakers' names and cameras are being recorded, so you can just relax if you're watching. Tonight, we will have some brief introductions to our speakers, a discussion between Nat and Eman about their work, and then readings from their works. There will be a Q&A at the end, so just put any questions you have for our speakers in the chat, and we'll pick them up at the Q&A. So, Dr. Eman Abdelhadi is joining us from Chicago today. She's actually our very first international speaker that we have joining us online from America. She's an activist, academic and writer who thinks at the intersection of gender, sexuality, religion and politics. They're an assistant professor and sociologist at the University of Chicago, where they research American Muslim communities. So today, she'll be talking about her book, Everything for Everyone, An Oral History of the New York Commune, 2052 to 2072 from 2002, which she co-authored with M.E. O'Brien. Everything for Everyone is a collection of speculative oral histories that narrates the chaos of capitalist nation states in 2050 and looks back at the creation of a communal way of living from multiple voices and perspectives. Dr. Nat Raha is an Edinburgh-based poet and activist scholar. Her research focuses on transfeminism, practices and collectives of care and social reproduction, racial capitalism, and decolonization across poetry, art, and politics and history. She's the author of 4 books of poetry, including Apparitions, Nines, and Of Sirens, Bodies and Fault Lines. And her critical writing has appeared in Social Texts, the South Atlantic Quarterly, Trans Studies Quarterly, and she also co-edited Imagining Queer Europe Then and Now, a special issue from Third Text in 2021. So tonight, Nat will be talking about Transfem Futures, Abolitionist Ethics for a Transfeminist World, a book she co-authored with Micah van der Drift in 2024. Transfem Futures examines the radical possibilities of transfem collective liberation through a critical exploration of practices of care.
Transfem liberation. Oh, this is going to be a good episode, guys. This is going to be a good episode. I'm going to tell you right now. Can't stay for the stream, but thanks for your awesome work. Hey, thanks, Ghostwriter. I appreciate that.
Simplicity and solidarity. So I will hand over to the two.
Okay, so pop quiz for the chat. Let's see who was paying attention on the Queer Marxism Manifesto the other day, okay? When they say trans in this context, what do they mean? This is a pop quiz. If you didn't watch the Be Gay Do Terrorism stream the other day, you may not know this, but I did break this down on the stream rather in depth. What does trans mean in this context? When you see trans femme futures, what does trans mean in this context? Exactly. You guys are getting. Let me put the chat on the screen so you guys can see. Sorry, I forgot to put it up there. That's exactly right. People are getting it. It means transcend. It does not mean transition. It means transcend or transform. Transcend or transform. That's what we're talking about in this particular context, going beyond gender. When they say femme is not the same as woman. Femme is feminine, but it's not woman. So it's not, femme is not a gender. It is more like a, oh, I don't know. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but it is a distinct category from woman. In that it's just like the more feminine, which is going to be the more kind of like femme in this case is going to be like the proletarian. You know what I'm saying? Transform or transcend the gender binary. Two ladies again. Karlyn, I was trying to correct other channels of their mistakes in what they're saying. They sure don't like my comments on a few channels. Many are confused. Well, that makes sense because most people who talk about the left don't actually listen to the left. And when you try to tell them, no, that's not what they say, they get deeply confused. But I do appreciate the effort, two ladies. Thank you for that. You guys, so many right answers in the chat. So many right answers in the chat. Yeah, this is all about transcending gender. So when we're talking about queer Marxism, they are not, they want to abolish gender entirely. They want to abolish the category of man. They want to abolish the category of woman. Okay. So when they're saying the word trans, they don't mean transition from man to woman or woman to man. They mean to transcend the idea of gender altogether. Excellent job, guys. Well done.
Abolitionist Ethics for Transfeminist Worlds, a book she co-authored with Maaike van der Drift in 2024. Transfemme Futures examines the radical possibilities of transfemme collective liberation through a critical exploration of practices of care, complicity, and solidarity. So I will hand over to the two of you. Right. Welcome.
Thank you so much for that.
There she is. Hi, Mom.
Thanks, Kiva. Thanks for having us. Lavender Menace. Thanks for being here, Eman. We were exchanging stories that we met about a year ago.
Is that a tranny? That's a tranny, right?
In Chicago. So it's nice that we're here virtually in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
You're glad you're not here. It's chaos, maybe.
I did hear there's a festival going on.
Yeah. We're gonna dive straight in, and maybe we should just give a little heads up of what the structure of today's event is. We decided that I'm gonna ask Eman some questions about everything for everyone, an oral history of the New York Commune 2052 to 2072. And then Eman's gonna ask me some questions about transfemme futures, and I guess the conversation is gonna be expansive as well. And then we're going to do some readings, each of us from each of the books, and then we'll be open for Q&A. And we've got until about 7:30, should we need it. And
all right. I told you guys at the beginning, no debunking, and I'm gonna cut this off right now because listen, if we stop to say that's not true for a reason X, Y, B, and Z, we would literally never get through this presentation. So by the way, what you're saying isn't even true. How they're transcending gender is they're teaching kids that gender isn't real in school. So not only shouldn't you not only are you debunking when you should be listening, your debunk is actually completely and totally incorrect. So please, guys, no debunking. They are going to say a lot of crazy shit in this presentation. Every time they say something crazy, I don't want to see in the chat, that's wrong for reason X, Y, B, and Z, or that'll never work. You're confused. I don't give a flying fuck. You're confused. I'm not asking you for your opinion right now. I am asking you to stop talking and to listen and to ask questions if you have them about the content of what they're saying. But I am not asking for your opinion, okay? This is a research group and a class. No debunking. If we debunk every crazy thing they say, we will never get through this stream.
Questions in the chat. That's what we've got to keep remembering. Okay, so I'm going to dive in with these questions because they're all quite long-winded. So as you know, man. So for people who haven't read it,
read it.
This book is a set of oral histories that are produced over written over a 5-year period in terms of the narrative of the book. And so I wanted to ask, to begin with, a question on form. People in the chat know I'm a literary geek. And I was wondering if you could speak about the structure of this book as an oral history. I was thinking about the relationship between the oral history work that both you and Michelle O'Brien, the other author, have undertaken kind of elsewhere, and also the writing of oral history as speculative fiction. How did you decide to work in this form, and how did you co-author these histories? Why oral history?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And
okay, so I want to make sure people understand what they're talking about. Okay, they're talking about, I told you Imam Abdelhadi wrote this book with Emmy O'Brien. This is the book they're talking about right now. It's called Everything for Everyone, an oral history of the New York Commune, 2052 to 2072. I want to specifically focus in on the idea of an oral history, because you actually see this a lot on the left. The left loves to document the oral history of things, which essentially just means they are interviewing people about their experience and about their perspective, and then they're archiving that material somewhere. And there are a ton of oral history projects on the left. Now, the benefit of this for us is that it actually gives us a firsthand account of what the left is thinking, what they believe. If we can find an oral history project somewhere, that is a metric ton of information. We can take that, we can listen to it, we can drop it into an AI, the transcripts of it. We can put all that together and get a really, really, really succinct view of what the left believes and why they believe it. So it's basically like, it's like a shortcut into the center of their brain, so we know what they're talking about and what they're thinking about on any given day. No. Shut the fuck up and listen. I have a feeling I'm gonna be yelling at a lot of people tonight. No, this is not a fairy tale. If you see it as a fairy tale, then you don't see it as data and information, and therefore you are of no use to me at all, because our job here is to collect data. Oral history sounds Talmudic to me. That's because you hate Jews. That's because you are literally framing everything in terms of Jews instead of listening to what we're talking about. What an oral history is, it is an interview where someone talks about their experiences and they talk about their perspective. That is extremely valuable to us in terms of a data source. And this is the type of data that the left loves. This is called qualitative data. It allows you to identify themes. It allows you to identify patterns that are showing up in the language and the stories. And so these types of things are really valuable. But I just wanted to make sure people understood what they mean when they say oral history. It's people telling their stories. Human beings are storytellers. We have always been storytellers. We learn by stories. The right doesn't understand this, and that's why they don't do this. The left figured this out a long time ago, which is why they are eminently more effective at dictating the overall culture. Let's go back to the video.
All your thoughtful questions, which I'm excited about. So we both, as you alluded to, have done oral history. So I do oral histories for my sociological work, and Michelle used to ran the Trans Oral History Project, which was in collaboration with the New York Public Library, and is a great archive.
I didn't know that. I knew that Emmy O'Brien ran the Trans Oral History Project. I knew that Emmy O'Brien took down their own trans oral history, but we have it archived, so it doesn't really matter. We have all that shit. It doesn't matter if Emmy O'Brien tries to take it off the internet. We have it all. But I did not know that Emmy O'Brien was partnered with New York Public Library to do that, which of course makes sense.
Of interviews with trans New Yorkers.
It's all online. It's all online, isn't it?
Yeah. So we've both done a lot of oral history, and I think, we both believe that oral history is an important method because it sort of it's at the intersection of individual agency and how people manage their own lives and make choices. But also it shows how those choices are constrained by and against the backdrop of geopolitical and structural constraints. So I think we both see oral history as an important format for that. And I note that oral history is something that many, Black historians and authors have had to fight for as a legitimate method of also writing history itself. So I think it's an important form. And in terms of the book, it really allowed us to cover a really large span of time, right? Because we had characters who were born who are sort of our age, and then we had characters that were born basically in a post-revolutionary future. So it would have been very difficult for a 200-page traditional novel to cover that much ground, that much of a time span. And at the same time, it allowed us to cover a large geographic span because folks, the characters moved between places. So, you could have a character that had lived in China, you had a character who lived in Palestine. And so you could get glimpses of what we were
by the way,
trying to.
I wanted to tell people just before I forget, this is separate from this. This is just, the thought just hit my head and I wanted to tell it to you guys earlier and I forgot. Okay. So do you guys know how we talked about doing the Occupied Libraries event next year? So for people who don't know, we had kind of a little brainstorm this week on one of my streams about the librarians, where we're going to do this. And I'm actually serious about making this happen. In 2026, I want to do a series of events at public libraries in very leftist locations where I go in and I do a presentation of all of my socialism stuff and I show all the clips of the socialists and do all that. And I do the whole kind of like re-education thing. I also want to provide resources for other people to go into libraries around them and do the same presentation in their library. We're going to call this Occupy Libraries. And it's going to be awesome. It's going to be fucking awesome. But do you know what I realized today? And again, I just want to let people know this. We're going to run Occupied Libraries through the Center for Left-Wing Studies. Why are we running Occupied Libraries through the Center for Left-Wing Studies? Because people can give me gifts tax deductible in order to fund it. So I had this epiphany. I was like, I have a nonprofit. If I do something like in libraries where we aren't charging money for tickets or doing anything like that, we're doing a public service. I was like, I have a nonprofit. We can just run this thing through the nonprofit and use tax deductible gifts. We have to find like a millionaire to make us a really big fuck off gift for this. And that way all my travel and stuff is paid for. We can fly other people in for it. So if we can find someone really rich to give us a tax deductible gift to my nonprofit, specifically to sponsor Occupy Libraries, that would be rad. That would be rad. So that's it. That's it.
Paint as a global revolution. So I think it served like both of these purposes really well for the book.
Yes,
and frankly, it was just a lot easier to write than a traditional novel. Like neither of us is a fiction writer primarily. We've both written more fiction since the novel, and we're working on more now. But it was for both of us, I think, intimidating to. It would have been very intimidating to just like try to write a traditional novel, and so this kind of gave us this felt much more manageable. And there's this way that people can kind of write into the book. So people have assigned this book at universities, and often the assignment, the final assignment is to write your own fictional oral history. And actually we're now launching a website where people can write into the world of Everything for Everyone. So yeah.
I mean, you say it's easier, but I feel like writing speech in a way that feels real is also a challenge. And I'm thinking about also the kind of, there are like, there's like vocabulary that develops. I think people being referred to as chaps quite a lot. It's quite funny in particular. But also that, I guess it gives the characters a chance to speak about their experiences of the world in that sense, and their visions of the world that has arrived and that has been born. How did you do this practically though, in terms of did you write the interviews that you authored, or did Michelle write the ones, or vice versa? Or did you both write them?
The ones that we are like the interviewees for were the primary authors of those. So the way we did it when we proposed the book to Common Notions, we wrote up little like blurbs of each of the potential characters. So we had a kind of outline of the world, sort of what a lot of that ended up in the introduction. And then we had like a paragraph for each character. And we each proposed like 6 characters, and then we kind of gave each other feedback, and then we just started writing them one by one. And we would rewrite each other's work and edit it, and our editor, Andy Battle, also did a lot of gave us a lot of feedback on these early chapters. But practically that's like we just kind of wrote them, and then there was a lot of then we had to really adjust the timeline. We had a kind of general timeline of this world that we were building that was in the introduction. But then as we wrote these, the timelines really changed, and we needed like some consistency. And so we had to, there was like an iterative process between the interviews and the introduction to just make sure that it all kind of cohered. Yeah.
Nice. I like this because one of the questions I've been getting, or that maybe not so much in public conversations, but definitely in terms of like the conversations about how do you write a book with another person that I've been getting around Transform Futures is like, yeah, did you write, it's like, we really produced this book discursively. There are a lot of conversations that we had that we recorded and then we transcribed. And then there are other times where one person started writing a chapter and the other person wrote a chapter. But by the end of the editing process, you forget who kind of began what. And so the book's kind of has a multiplicity of voices, but it's also just like, actually, that's kind of what we want. We want to like refuse the individual authorship a little bit and be open to this, to being changed by your co-author as well in the learning process.
I love that.
Cool. Okay, so moving to my next question, thinking about the radical history of New York City, which is also like special interest for me, and its importance as a locus of so many political movements across history. It's really fascinating to see how in your book, New York is both explicitly a site of revolution and also kind of belated in relation to global ecological and cultural developments. So could you speak a little bit about this kind of dual character of New York, and like why New York also?
Yeah. Well, I used to live in New York for a long time. Michelle has lived there for a couple of decades now.
For like 60 decades, I guess, by the time.
Exactly. Yeah. We both have enormous love for the city. I mean, I had just moved away to Chicago, when we were writing this book. So I think, and in many ways, both of our political development happened in the book. I mean, in the city, in New York. And so there is a sort of like love letter to the city kind of beneath the novel. But
I mean, that gives you some sense of just how like communist New York is, isn't it? Because you're talking about Michelle O'Brien and Imam Abdelhadi are two extremely far left communists that were obviously in some sort of extremely far left communist subculture in New York. And it's like they're saying this city was formative to our development. And now, of course, Zohran Mamdani is the mayor of New York City. He is a democratic socialist, although he does definitely have some revolutionary tendencies. I think he reins them in, but he's not a full revolutionary because he never would have run in the election if he was a full revolutionary. So yeah. And bro, I agree with this too. Listen, for this new person who keeps spamming the chat, fucking cut this shit out right now. The next time you do this, you're going to be permanently banned from my chat. I know you got gifted that channel membership. You're not a supporter. You've been ranting and raving. Shut the fuck up and listen, or we are going to ban you because the spam has been way too much. And now you're starting to annoy other people in the chat. And I don't appreciate it.
I think that it felt really important to me from both like a kind of theoretical perspective of like how I think world revolution will unfold, and from a symbolic perspective that the global north, that like Europe and North America, and particularly the US, are not the leaders of the revolution. So often on the left, we have this like idea that, even on the left, I think we often have this idea that like whatever we do, the rest of the world is going to follow. And the reality is that so much of the revolutionary, what has happened, so much of like the revolutionary uprising that has happened around the world has not happened in the context of the center of empire, and I think on a theoretical level there is this sense that for me, one of the core kind of theses of the book is that the nation state falls because of increasing crisis, and that when the nation state falls, the market and the nation state basically fall in tandem, and their falls are like mutually reinforcing, right? It wouldn't make sense for the places with the strongest states to be the first ones to have this fall, right? And the reality is that we have, in the US, and we feel it now more than ever with Trump,
All right, so there's the question in the chat, and guys, I do always want to encourage questions. I do prefer the questions to be relevant to the presentation, Dean Bob, so I'm making an exception this time, but please keep questions relevant to the presentation in the future, unless you want to send in a super chat or something, I guess. Genuine question, is China, North Korea, Venezuela, etc. actually communist, or are communists just coping when they say they aren't? Well, China is not communist. China is capitalist. Communists do not believe China is communist at all. It's only the Republicans who scream about China being communist, but China is capitalist. Like, so they may have I mean, they have some communist tendencies, but the foundation of what they're doing is capitalism. And there are really no communist groups in America that I know of that look at China as like the model to follow, to be honest. So let's wipe that one off. North Korea, they don't ever really talk about. So I mean, obviously North Korea is communist, but they don't really talk about it. They don't talk about Venezuela, mostly because I think they believe that the reason that Venezuela is failing is because it's a communist country surrounded by capitalist countries. So essentially, guys, communists do not believe real communism has been tried until communism is global. So they don't really talk about the other countries because they do not believe that that is real communism. They believe the only form of real communism that can succeed is when communism is global. Yeah, it doesn't actually matter, bro. It doesn't, no conservative retard talking points here. Literally no, okay, you're gonna laugh. Okay, you're putting a timeout. Now you can shut the fuck up. No conservative retard talking points. Real communists and socialists do not believe China's communist. That's reality, whether or not conservatives like it.
There's first, the state is incredibly powerful. Its ability to surveil, its ability to police, and the amount of consent that people have for it. Like the willingness to revolt is so low here, right? Like our neighbors are literally getting kidnapped off the street. And some of the things that are happening in the US and even other Western countries, like I can't imagine that there wouldn't be riots in France if France was going through exactly what we were going through. I mean, and there's already, there are issues there as well, obviously. But so I think that these states are actually going to be the last to fall. I think that where you have the weakest states and like already the crises of climate catastrophe, the crises of, sort of like falling markets and falling states, that's where the first kind of revolutionary uprisings are going to happen. And we'll have more and more, and it'll eventually spread to these places, but they're not at the forefront.
Mm-hmm. And I guess there's a sense of like, on the one hand, I think the conversation about the colonial boomerang in Aimé Césaire's kind of formulation has been quite present, at least in the UK recently. I say recently, in like the last 5 to 10 years, where we're really rethinking about remembering that Britain is an ongoing form of empire. And next to that, I was thinking about some of the key social movements of the last 15 years having always been like, say, the Arab Spring, Tahrir Square, these moments of uprising happened in the Levant, and the global north, or the metropole, however we want to think about it, is belatedly enacting something in the spirit of this. Maybe
when they say global north, they mean industrialized countries, like fully industrialized countries. When they say global south, they mean basically like third world countries or repressed countries or oppressed countries or like proletarian. So global north, think of global north as the oppressor, the bourgeois. Global south is the oppressed or the proletarian. They're not saying they're not saying like northern hemisphere or southern hemisphere. North means they're on top, south means they're on the bottom.
And often that the histories of, say, of Occupy is like that those connections get disconnected. Sorry, those international links get disconnected, and actually there's a real key work, like an ongoing key work in kind of leftist historiography to be like, no, actually, these are all we're all internationally interconnected already. Like,
right.
We're all inspired by each other's modes of resistance, and that's already happening internationally as well.
That's right.
And maybe you could speak a little bit about that in relation to the novel. I'm thinking about the liberation of the Levant. It's also this kind of key historical event that takes place in Everything for Everyone.
Yeah, I think that's exactly as you put it, right? There's this way that we tend to erase these connections, but also, we often will say on the left, like, you can't have revolution in just one state, right? Like, you can't have communism in just one state. You can't have, and I think that
you can't have communism in just one state. You can't have revolution in just one state. And when they say state, in this case, they're talking. Look at a mom. This is a perfect freeze frame. They're talking about New York State in this case, because in a mom's book, basically New York becomes communist. It's like the overthrow of but it's like the New York commune. Okay, so it's like they're saying you can't have a communist state surrounded by capitalist states, because if you have a communist state surrounded by capitalist states, the capitalist states are going to work together to destroy the communist state. That is essentially what she's saying here. And that could be like literal state, like in the United States, like you can't have one state be communist and the rest be capitalist. It could also be the United States surrounded by capitalist countries, or it could be like Venezuela surrounded by capitalist countries. Does everyone understand?
Listen, everything for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's exactly as you put it, right? There's this way that we tend to erase these connections, but also, we often will say on the left, like, you can't have revolution in just one state, right? Like, you can't have communism in just one state. You can't have, and I think that increasingly that feels more and more true. And I think
no debunking, Mr. Gurr.
We are. It's also a question of like where is the state strongest, like I said, but also where are movements strongest, and where is there fodder for people to rise up, and whether that's like material resources or sort of ideological ones as well. And frankly, like the movements that we've seen across the world, even though they've been horribly crushed, just as they've been crushed here in the US and in Western Europe, have had just like so much radical potential and radical forms that have often made their way over here, and often in kind of diluted versions of themselves. So yeah, I think there's this sort of recognition of this interdependence, which also comes into the sort of political economy of the book, right? How do we communize in a world in which we are so interdependent on each other for production, becomes one of the kind of questions of the book as well.
Hey, bro, do you think we're communists? Because I've already put you in a timeout for saying some retard shit, and now this makes it seem to me like you think you're talking to communists. So, and also you kind of seem black in this. Like it's just not good. It's like black grammar. So after you kill everyone to try communism worldwide and it fails, will you then say it has to be universe wide to work? So fucks f's up communism people. Do you think you're talking to communists right now? You had a whole 5-minute timeout to figure out what's going on here. So I'm gonna put it to the chat. 1 in the chat for ban this person because he's not smart enough to be here. 2 in the chat if we should let him stay. 1 in the chat to ban. You guys are gonna decide. I'm not gonna decide. 1 in the chat to ban this person because he's not smart enough to be here. 2 in the chat if he should stay. Uh-oh. That's a lot of ones. Sorry, banned. Sorry, you don't get to be here. Not smart enough. Sorry, better luck next time. Sorry, goodbye.
Great. I'm sorry, I'm making extra notes.
It's okay.
It's on the subject of being radically crushed.
Yeah.
So a number of friends, writers, comrades, some of whom I hope are watching. So shout out, you know who you are, or watching the recording, watching live or watching the recording. Spoke of how the book
this is what democracy
brains,
looks like.
That's the phrasing on reading it. How do you understand the role of culture, be that literature, the arts, in the revolutionary transformation of the world that we're trying to usher? And maybe rather than thinking about what literature doesn't do, because we have a lot of conversations about like literature isn't, it's next to activism or being on strike or a blockade. Like literature isn't these things. We could think about what it does differently to other forms of political organizing, or mutual aid or social justice, education,
mutual
or
aid,
even archiving that we're involved in. So like, what does literature do differently?
Yeah, I think, I think often about this. In the spring, Judith Butler came to Chicago, where I teach, and they gave this amazing lecture about how the fascist right has been able to basically excite the passions of the public, mostly through this kind of like sadistic, vengeful.
I fucking wish, Imam, that the fascists had been able to ignite the imagination of the public. Are you insane? Thank you, Mr. Gurr, for the $2. Like, this is where like the left, the right doesn't understand the left. We know the right doesn't understand the left, but the left also does not understand the right. And Imam Abdelhadi is actually convinced that the entire right is fascist. And I'm sitting here going, God damn, like, not fascist enough. Like, not even close enough. We wish, Imam, we wish.
Where I teach, and they gave this amazing lecture about how the fascist right has been able to basically excite the passions of the public, mostly through this kind of like sadistic, vengeful fantasy, right? That's both nostalgia for the past and a sort of vision of like total control. And often on the left, we've countered that with sort of like very effectively modest proposals, right? Either like modest proposals or sort of like proposals that are not fleshed out fully, and we'll say like, oh, these people are lying to you, these people are like these kind of really rational like explanations, and part of what Butler was arguing is like, people know that Trump is lying. It's actually part of the appeal. It's that he is able to go out in public and break the rules, and that excites the passions, right? That people are like this, and it's part of people's dissatisfaction.
All right, hang on. Chris, you've been saying some retard stuff in the chat tonight, Chris. I'm very sorry. I don't mean to hurt your feelings, but you've been saying some retard stuff in the chat tonight. And so this is the last straw, though. We need to set you straight on this. Some socialists and communists where communities, I don't know, you've made a typo, but basically what you're saying is she's a socialist, but she's using iPods and she has an Apple Watch and it doesn't make any sense. Pop quiz for the chat. Why are socialists and communists allowed to buy Apple products, seemingly engaging in capitalism? Why are socialists and communists totally allowed to buy Apple products or Apple computers or expensive phones or anything else, even though they're communists? Why are they allowed to do that? They're allowed to use capitalism under capitalism to overthrow capitalism. They are allowed to engage in the capitalist system as long as they are working against the capitalist system. They are allowed to participate in capitalism to overthrow the system. This is literally in the Communist Manifesto. This is in the Communist Manifesto, guys. They are allowed to use capitalism to subvert capitalism. They live in a capitalist system. They live in a capitalist society. They have to survive within the capitalist society. So therefore, ergo, they have to engage in capitalism. And as long as they are in the pursuit of the noble revolution to overthrow capitalism, they are completely allowed to do that. Okay. So can we please, this is one of the top stupid debunks that conservatives do, because it honestly just proves that conservatives haven't even read the Communist Manifesto and know this has nothing to do with Muslims. I'm so fucking sick of people putting Muslim shit in the chat because you guys don't like Muslims, because you've been brainwashed to not like Muslims by the Jews who want you to go to war against the Muslims. You understand that, right? The only reason you guys don't like Muslims is because the Jews have fucking brainwashed you, because Israel wants you to go to war with the Islamic countries on behalf of Israel to send American kids to die for Israel. So can we please literally just shut the fuck up about Muslims, because it has no relevance to even what we're talking about right now. Does everyone understand? They are allowed to engage in capitalism because they live in a capitalist system. Therefore, saying, I don't understand why they have an Apple computer if they want to overthrow capitalism. They're allowed to. It's in the Communist Manifesto. This is why conservatives need to educate themselves on what the left actually believes, because it's like when conservatives make these. By the way, the next conservative debunk is going to be they don't have jobs. Imam Abdelhadi is a professor at the University of Chicago. She has a job. It's all good. It's all good. Welcome, Chris. We appreciate you listening. That's it. And listen, by the way, if you're a new person here and you use some of these debunks, I'm really not trying to make you feel bad, okay? I'm really not trying. I understand why conservatives use these debunks, because their influencers and their journalists and their pundits use these. It's stuff you're hearing on conservative media and from conservative podcasters and shit like that. And so I'm not trying to make you feel bad every time I disprove one of the retarded debunks that conservatives make, but like, this is why we don't debunk on this show. This is why I beg and I plead with people to not debunk in the chat, because you guys don't know that your debunks are stupid, and there is an easy explanation under their ideology. If you feel a debunk coming on and you absolutely have to do a debunk, ask a question. Instead of saying, it's stupid that she has an Apple Watch if she wants to overthrow capitalism. That's a retard debunk. But instead, what you could do is say, Karlyn, why is it that all these communists seem to own all these expensive Apple products if they want to overthrow capitalism? That is a smart person like way of approaching the situation, because it's like, then you're saying, I don't understand this. Like they say they're against capitalism and yet they own all these very capitalist products. Like, what the fuck is going on? Like, you tell me they're committed to overthrowing this. Like, why the fuck? Because I understand that you haven't been given this information, but if you just come in here and do the typical owning the libs debunk bullshit, you have to, like, do you think you're the first person to ever say that in my chat? I've been doing Socialism Saturday for 4 years. Do you think you're the first person to ever come into my chat and say, they're not really communists because they own an Apple Watch? Do you think you're the first person to ever do that? No, you're not. You're barely the 2000th person to do it, and I'm sick of having to repeat myself. So just ask a question. Just ask a question, and I will be more than happy to answer the question. Okay?
With their material reality, and he's giving them a sort of like narrative. And I think that on the left, we need to offer radical futures that excite the passions, and we need to do that both as organizers, right? So in terms of being able to say, what is this world that we're fighting for? It's not a nostalgia for like global liberalism, right? It's not a nostalgia for the 90s, right? Or any of these moments that pretend like that liberals have nostalgia for. It's actually about futurity, right? It's not about a return to the past. We often do the same nostalgia, right? It's about offering something completely different. It's saying to people, yes, I agree with you. Life is fucked up and broken. And we can just go and do something completely different. And being able to flesh that out into a world, I think you can uniquely do that in fiction in ways that, and in ways that, again, to use Butler's words, excite the passions. That's something that is really hard to do in a theoretical essay. It's really hard to do.
Okay, what she's saying here is actually very, very important, and I'm going to explain why. So we talked earlier about how Imam Abdelhadi co-wrote this book, envisioning the future socialist utopia. Okay. And this is not the only exercise doing this. A lot of different socialist authors do this. They write sci-fi novels, or like what they call it speculative fiction. It's basically saying what might happen. What are ways in which we could organize society after capitalism? Hey, thanks, Nick, for the super chat. Want debunk? At least pay. Yeah, if you're going to debunk something, at least pay me money. That's exactly right. So why are they doing these? Is it just because they're bored and they want to write a book about the future socialist utopia? No, the purpose of these books is to get people who read them to imagine a future reality beyond the society that we currently have. Because the goal of the far left is to overthrow the society that we currently have. They want to abolish the government. They want to abolish the courts. They want to abolish the prisons. They want to abolish the police. They want to abolish banks. They want to abolish money. They want to abolish all private businesses. They want to abolish all private farms and take control of the food supply. They want to abolish all educational options, including private schooling and homeschooling that are not public schooling, because they want all children to go through the same public school. They want to abolish parental rights. They want all of the children to belong to everyone. All of the kids belong to the community. No parental rights. And there are other things they want to do too. They want to literally destroy the current system and place a new one on top of it. However, they have to get people on board with a future vision, okay? It's not enough for socialists and communists to say capitalism fucking sucks, and by capitalism they mean the government. They believe the government is a capitalist government. Our Constitution is a capitalist document. It's not enough for them to say capitalism sucks and stop there. They have to say capitalism sucks, and we can create a world beyond capitalism that is much better, that's going to be better for everyone, because they really do believe that they're doing that. They believe that abolishing capitalism will be literally better for everyone, but they have to create a future vision of what that world looks like. Because if you're just a normal person and you're like, yeah, I don't think capitalism's that great, but like, what are you going to replace it with? And they're like, here, read this book. We don't know exactly what we're going to do, but here's a vision for how this could work. And then they start having all sorts of these creative brainstorms about, what if we do this? What if we do that? What if we do this other thing? They are creating a vision of the future communist utopia, and they are giving people a way to look beyond the current system to understand what they could replace it with. Now, will any of their utopian ideas work? No, probably not. But that's not the point, guys. They are giving someone a vision. They are making it real. They are making it tangible. Even if it's called a speculative fiction, this could be one of our futures. They're giving people something to say. This is what we're going for. This is what we're fighting for. This is what we're going to overthrow society and create on top of it. You have to give people a vision if you want them to take action. Okay. Now, just because they give them that vision doesn't mean they're ever going to achieve that. They're probably never going to achieve that, because it's not possible to achieve some of the things they want. But that does not matter. And this, again, is why we don't debunk on this show. It's like, you can't debunk a future speculative vision, because it's a future speculative vision. This is not about logic. This is about pulling on the emotional heartstrings to say, look at this beautiful world that we could create. And this is how they get people on board with their ideas. Without the vision, you can't get people on board with the ideas. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Thank you, Chris, for the super chat. Just want to support and realize my own ignorance now. Chris, it's not that serious, bro, but I do appreciate the money. Thank you for re-educating me. This is much needed and should be required for all. Listen, Chris, I didn't want to make you feel bad, Chris, but I do. You know what I appreciate, Chris? I appreciate when people are open to listening and learning, even if I'm being a little antagonistic. And I especially appreciate it when people send me money after I correct them. I think that that's really the rule that we should be implementing for everyone. So I appreciate it, Chris. No harm, no foul, bro. We appreciate you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for listening.
In things that are not art, right? Mm-hmm. And I think should be in conversation, right? Again, Michelle and I, neither of us is a fiction writer primarily, right? But this was a fiction manifestation of like a decade.
Yeah, it's a business pitch. That's a great way to put it, Seeker.
Revolution and transition and what it would look like.
I need a beer.
So I think that this remains a very important a form. And I agree with folks who say like, this is not the same. You know, I still organize them in the streets, etc. Like it's not the same, but I think it's in dialogue with, and it helps bolster. And you know, I think if we're really committed to building a completely radically different world, we do need ideological change. We need cultural change.
See,
we need to dissipate. And this is what I loved about your book too, right? That it like takes very seriously this, like, how do we treat each other in this future world that we anticipate, and what of that could we already begin to embody? So I think for me, some of the most depressing moments are when, our book is taught, and I have like a 19-year-old say to me, but no one's gonna work if you don't. And I'm a hardcore materialist, right? Like, I'm a Marxist, I'm a materialist, but at the end of the day, like, that ideology, the way that the ideology of this system works, that's part of our battle. Like, we have to fight the ideological grounds. We have to fight a world in which people believe that without the state and without the police, everyone's gonna just kill each other within minutes, or that without, the profit motive.
We have to fight all the debugs. So Imam Abdelhadi is actually telling us right now, she's saying, when I try to present these ideas, sometimes kids come up to me and they say, but we can't have a world without the police because there'll be crime. Or we can't have a world without capitalism because no one will work. So Imam Abdelhadi is actually debunking the conservative talking points right now. She's saying we need to give people a vision to show them that we can have a world beyond capitalism and it could work. That's what she's saying. Hey, thanks, Chris, for the super chat. I appreciate what you're doing, and it never took it too hard, justified and open-minded. Awesome. Awesome. Listen again.
I still organize them in the streets, etc. Like, it's not the same, but I think it's in dialogue with, and it helps bolster. And I think if we're really committed to building a completely radically different world, we do need ideological change. We need cultural change. We need to dissipate. And this is what I loved about your book too, right? That it like takes very seriously this, like, how do we treat each other in this future world that we anticipate, and what of that could we already begin to embody? So I think for me, some of the most depressing moments are when, our book is taught, and I have like a 19-year-old say to me, but no one's gonna work if you don't. And I'm a hardcore materialist, right? Like, I'm a Marxist, I'm a materialist, but at the end of the day, like, that ideology, the way that the ideology of this system works, that's part of our battle. Like, we have to fight the ideological grounds. We have to fight a world in which people believe that without the state and without the police, everyone's gonna just kill each other within minutes, or that without, the profit motive, that no one's going to produce anything, even though it doesn't take much to realize that that's not true. Like, it takes a few minutes of conversation, but the idea is extremely powerful, and it's really shaped the world that we live in.
So she views this as fighting these ideas that this world beyond capitalism can't work by convincing people that, even if you're not getting paid for a job, you're still going to work it. Now, they do actually believe that. And that is actually probably true, because in the future communist utopia, if you don't work, you don't eat. So Karlyn, what would motivate, this is a question I get often, which is why I'm bringing it up. Karlyn, what would motivate people to work in the future communist utopia where there are no banks and there are no money? If there's no money, then why would people go to work? If you don't work, you don't eat. Because the future communist utopia also controls the food supply. They control your food rations. And so they can take those rations away if you aren't going and doing your communist job in the utopia, because you're not contributing like a comrade to the community. Now, if you had a good reason for it, like you were disabled or something, that's different, because remember, it's from each according to their ability, to each according to their need. So if you're like disabled and you can't work or something like that, that's going to be treated differently. They're not going to starve disabled people. Okay, that's not the point. The point is, if you are a person that is capable of working and contributing to the communist utopia, and you choose not to do that because you're not getting financial compensation, you're not going to eat. They're going to take your food away.
And it's, on the one hand, it's coming back to revealing how narrow the vision of possibility, or of production of like why we work, how that aperture is really narrowed by capitalism. by the expectations, especially as I feel like maybe this is more pronounced sometimes with younger folks who haven't seen visions of alternatives or other ways of organizing the world.
Exactly.
And because one of the things that for me, when I was thinking about the rewiring of the brain, is actually to also face up to these kind of like these like major historical catastrophes that take place in the book, and having to face them and face what comes after them as well. And maybe I'm going to jump to what's the fifth question on the thing, if that's cool.
Yeah, sure.
Wait, when I get there, what was I going to say? I was going to say, yeah, that I'm thinking about maybe this question around, I'm like, you're like, me and Michelle are not fiction writers, but you are oral historians. So there's some question around like the speculative history that you are still working in a form that you know really intimately, that you spent so much time with, literally. And okay, so question 5. So the book's published in 2022, and one of the challenging things about reading it now, during the agonizingly ongoing genocide in Gaza, it's day 672 of the genocide, is to read in the book visions and echoes of dystopian events that have since taken place in Gaza. I'm thinking especially of, in the book, I'm trying to remember if it was the NYPD, was bombing of Elmhurst Hospital in Queens in 2050, after it had been liberated by patients and the commune, after the failure of the hospital to provide care during year 3 of a global pandemic. Alongside today's total, if not partial, destruction of most of Gaza's medical facilities, or their debilitation through the total blockade of supplies, there's also these historical resonances of radical...
Please cut this out. I have already stopped and begged you. Guys, we are 25 minutes into this stream, and I've already stopped like 4 times to beg people to stop debunking. Please listen to me and stop debunking. Crazy they don't know the tragic history of communism. Bro, I literally said like maybe 10 or 15 minutes ago that they believe real communism has never been tried because they believe the only form of real communism is global communism. So your history does not matter to them. They do not believe that was real communism because it was not global communism. Had you been listening 20 minutes ago when I explained this explicitly, this chat wouldn't have happened. That's proof that you're not listening. The reason you're not listening is because you're working on debunking more than listening. Please cut it out. You are not learning if you are only interested in debunking the left. And I promise you, debunking the left is not going to make any difference. They are not listening to you. They don't care what you have to say.
For anti-imperial and anti-colonial activism, I was thinking about the Young Lords, who famously took over Lincoln Hospital in the Bronx in New York in 1970. To reorient its services towards Latinx people who were experiencing life-affecting racialized medical neglect. It's a great documentary on that, by the way, if people want to watch it on YouTube, called Takeover. Could you speak about...
Well, this is an interesting question. I'm a bit suspicious of your screen name. All right, maybe you're not who I think you are. That's fine. Why did a mom act so rashly that she got arrested? She comes across as quite eloquent. She is now facing federal charges and possibly extensive time in jail. Is this not a political own goal? I'm not sure what that question means, but what I will say is Imam Abdelhadi is a zealot for this ideology. This is what I keep trying to impress upon you guys. Like, we've been watching Imam Abdelhadi for years because Imam Abdelhadi is a zealot for this ideology. She might come across as sweet and soft-spoken, and she is very eloquent. She's a very, very smart person. But you have to remember that she is basically in a cult. She is a cult zealot for this ideology. So if you put Imam Abdelhadi at a protest, she loses her fucking mind. Okay? Imam Abdelhadi is a Palestinian. She is a Palestinian. So this is but the Palestine stuff is a very personal thing to her. and she doesn't she believes the police are evil. She believes ICE is evil. She believes that they are literally kidnapping people and deporting people, and it's like, and so like this is her cause. This is what she's passionate about. So am I surprised that Imam Abdelhadi crossed the line at a protest? No, I've been warning people about Imam Abdelhadi for years, because even though she's coming across as very sweet and kind, and she is a very smart person, she is a cult indoctrinated zealot to this ideology. So if she has the chance to do something crazy, chances are she's going to.
Facing the extremities of such horror, like creatively, on the page, and the importance of envisioning possibilities, both in terms of the challenges radical action faces, and what it may manifest.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question because, I've gotten some feedback, people are like, well, you wrote so much destruction into the world, right? Like Iranians, being like, this is so traumatic to read.
FYI, if you haven't read the book, America Goes to War in Iran, and that basically facilitates the collapse of America as well.
Yeah. And I think to that, my response is that we're already here. The collapse is here. The apocalypse is here. Pakistan was underwater-ish, under a third of Pakistan was underwater. I mean, just yesterday, like hundreds of people died from these new cloud bursts that, so to me, it's the only way that the book was going to do what it was intended to do was if it took collapse seriously, right? Like otherwise we end up with these transition narratives that are effectively liberal and that are effectively like somehow the state turns into a benign actor, right? Or like somehow we like take over. And
shitting on liberals.
I'm someone who is like, we should fight on every front that we have, given where we are. So I'm not mad at the people who are like running for elections on far left candidates. Like, fine, whatever, do what you need to do. Yeah, when anyone's running far right, I am mad at, absolutely. Yeah. But like, I think for me that I think what we are facing right now is this moment in which many people believe the future is impossible, and including many of our people. I have friends who say, like leftist friends who used to be organizers and who are artists and who basically are like, well, we're going extinct and it's my job to help like doula humanity through our extinction. And I find that deeply reactionary. I completely disagree, right? Like I insist on a future. And I think that insistence has to take into account the horror of this moment and has to imagine that we can move through that horror. And I wrote this not having even imagined what happened in Gaza. Like I wrote this book with Michelle, and it's like, and I still, when the genocide started, kept thinking that it was going to be like other bombing campaigns of Gaza, and that it was going to end, right? And like for many of us, for months, it was like I lived on my phone waiting for that ceasefire announcement, even though I was organizing 24/7, and like, and none of us could have imagined what Israel would get away with. And even now, with the consensus turning against them, even among centrists, right? There are no consequences. Like they are bombing the fuck out of Gaza City, and like they are not facing any consequences. That is the world that we live in, and it's not going to just be Israel, right? Like we're facing martial law in the U.S., right? So I think for me, we have to face the horror.
Someone asked earlier, why, like, how could she put herself in a position to get arrested? This interview was a month before she got arrested. This was 4 weeks before she got arrested, okay? Imam Abdelhadi literally believes that there is martial law in the United States right now. Are you really, like, confused about why she attacked like ICE agents or whatever she actually did. I forget exactly what it was. She thinks there is martial law in the United States right now. She actually believes that Donald Trump is a fascist. She has total derangement in this regard. She actually believes that her neighbors are being kidnapped by the fascist government. That's why. This is real for her.
And like, they're not facing any consequences. That is the world that we live in. And it's not going to just be Israel, right? Like, we're facing martial law in the US, right? So I think for me, we have to face the horror. Like, there can't be, if we are going to be serious about building another world, we have to both imagine the worst case scenario and imagine that we can get out of it. And fight it, like fight it tooth and nail.
This is incredibly true. And a lot of people don't understand this. She is fighting for something that she believes in with every fiber of her being. This is not a LARP. Some of the people in Portland, they're LARPing. Okay, we can all agree on this. Some of the people that are fucking around in Portland, they're doing it to fuck around. It's a game to them. That's like what it feels like to be in Portland. You feel like you're in a fucking video game. Okay? And so that is a LARP. Like, a lot of the Portland stuff, that's a fucking LARP. I actually don't really believe that most of the people that are out there in Portland are really all that far left. I think they're fucking around because they're bored. I think they're on the left. Don't get it twisted. And there are definitely some true believers out there. But for the most part in Portland, it's kind of a LARP because it's something to do. But you have to understand that on the far left, there are true believers. And for them, it is not a LARP. And I'm not trying to say everyone out in Portland is LARPing. I don't think Chandler's LARPing. I don't think Chandler's girlfriend is LARPing. I don't think what is Violet is LARPing. There are many people in Black Bloc out there that are actually not LARPing. They're just pissed off that people are recording them and stuff like that. But like, for Imam Abdelhadi, this is a true thing for her. This is how she sees the world. This is not going to a Renaissance festival on the weekend, okay? Like, this is who she is.
Fight for every morsel of food. Fight for every single person, that we can fight for. So it's not a matter of resignation. So we wanted the book to be one that took very seriously the horror of the moment that we're in, the catastrophe that capitalism has placed us in, and still believed in fighting and still believed in winning. And you can't have that if you're going to avoid the horrors, right? Like, you can't write that book. So I don't know if I even answered your question.
No, it's a beautiful question. Beautiful answer. Because in facing the horror and facing the extremities of utopia and dystopia together, rather than kind of thinking about them apart, it does also reveal about how we can respond to these moments, how we have responded to these moments, to thinking about the cyclical nature of history rather than a linear one, right?
That's right.
And for me, that's why, this is thinking about historical materialism or queer Marxism, whatever, but like part of the project.
No. Ears open, mouth shut. I specifically said that Chandler is not LARPing. I actually specifically said that Chandler is absolutely not LARPing. Chandler believes every single thing that he says. This is who Chandler is. This is their identity. He is 1000% not LARPing. And had you been listening, you would have known that. The guy after Chandler. Oh, the other Antifa guy? Sorry, I misunderstood. I apologize. I was wrong. I can admit when I was wrong. Do I think he was LARPing? Do I think Triple B Collective was LARPing? No. I don't think Triple B Collective was LARPing. My bad. Again, I apologize. I will admit when I'm wrong when I'm saying... I will admit when I'm wrong, okay? I read it wrong. I read it incorrectly. I apologize. Whatever. I do not actually think Triple B Collective was LARPing. I don't. I think that I think that Triple B Collective was doing a lot of drugs. That is an element on the far left. I'm not going to pretend that there's not drug use on the far left. There absolutely is drug use. But like, the people who are on drugs, like, they're in that world to get drugs. I don't think he was part of Antifa. I don't think he was faking it either. And by the way, I'm not telling tales out of school. He admitted he was on drugs at the time, right? And so it's like, I don't think he was really in Antifa as an ideological member of the group. I also don't think he was LARPing. It wasn't fake or anything. He was really doing all of those things, but I think he was there for drugs. And that's kind of like a different category.
Going back and exploring queer and trans histories for me, or histories as I usually call them, is to try and witness things that have taken place and to understand how they events might happen again, and responses or ways of being together in the world might emerge again, or be reactivated, but they're never going to be reactivated if they're historically obscured or erased or deleted, you know. And so the book so clearly elaborate.
Hang on, we'll get another question. And guys, if you haven't figured it out, I love questions in the chat. We will always stop when there's good questions in the chat and talk about it. I'm just curious, how does a person who's so well educated become so ingrained in their derangement? Is it indoctrination and listening to propaganda so much and for so long it just becomes part of them? Imam Abdelhadi is a far leftist that went to God knows how many far left universities. I don't know how many places Imam Abdelhadi went to school, but Imam Abdelhadi essentially went from being a college student to being a college professor. Imam Abdelhadi has never left the world of higher education. She went from being a college student, a bachelor's degree student, a master's degree student, a PhD level student. She spent a lot of fucking time as a student in college. And then after she graduated, she became a college professor. And she probably had to do other stuff too. She probably had to do like research jobs and stuff like that. That was also in academia before she got her professor position, because she's got a really cushy job. Like the job she has is not easy to get at all. So Imam Abdelhadi has spent her entire adult life in the land of higher education. These ideas are cultivated and disseminated within higher education. Now, that's not the only place you can find them. And I would argue that a lot of people who are in higher education are also involved in far left communities outside of higher ed, because there are many, you don't have to go to college to access these ideas. These ideas are on the streets. These ideas are in the subcultures. There are other places, but I'm saying, like, when you're in the, and especially in the world of elite colleges, again, the University of Chicago is an elite college. It is extremely elite. Okay. So especially in the world of elite colleges, it's like, these are the ideas in those spaces. Imam Abdelhadi is a sociology professor. Sociology is one of the key breeding grounds of these ideas. So how did she become so deranged? Because this is her entire world, her entire adult life. This is correct. She has lived in this bubble her entire adult life. She does not have friends outside this bubble. She does not probably have family outside this bubble. Every single person that Imam Abdelhadi talks to is in this bubble. Imam Abdelhadi is not capable of communicating with anyone outside this bubble. She can't do it. She is not capable of having conversations with people who are not in this ideological world. So that's how it happens, guys. It's like the left is a social ecosystem. You have to think about it as its own subculture. And there are also different subcultures within the subculture. But you have to understand, the reason that people are leftists is not because they're lazy. It's not because they're stupid. It's not because they're mentally ill. It's not any of these things that the right says. The reason they're in this subculture is somewhere along the way, they got indoctrinated and pulled into a cult. For some people, that happens in K through 12 public schools. For some people, that happens at home with their families, because many of these socialists and communists are second and third generation socialists and communists. For some people, that happens when they get to college. Okay? And so wherever it happens along the way, at some point, they get radicalized into a far left social ecosystem. Once you get into the social ecosystem, you're hanging out in their clubs, because they do have places where they hang out. You're hanging out in their bookstores. You're hanging out in their community centers or their collective organizations. You're going to protest together. You're doing direct action together. You are all reading the same books, and then you're doing book clubs and educational classes, and you're always doing this together because they're collectivists. So they believe in doing things with the group. You are doing all sorts of political organizing and activism. Like, every single thing you do becomes about being in this group. That's how it works.
how different communes and revolutionary moments came through the collapse and remaking of social structures, and especially so in the case of the family. Family abolition, of course, is a subject Michelle's written another book on.
Family abolition
family abolition provides multiple horizons and visions of demolishing.
I almost did a family abolition session tonight. What's a family how many people have never done family abolition with me? One in the chat if you have never been to a family abolition lecture before. 2 in the chat if you've done family abolition for me or with me. So let me explain as we go into this. I don't know how much they're going to talk about this. The far left really does want to abolish the nuclear family. The people that are pushing this are mostly queer Marxists, so they want to queer all of the norms of society. They want to queer gender. They want to queer the nuclear family. What they mean by queer the nuclear family is to take it out of the monogamous 2-person relationship with the kids and the house and the white picket fence and all that, and they want to queer relationships. They do not like marriage, even gay marriage. They don't approve of it because they believe marriage is a propertied relationship that is approved by the capitalist state. They want to do polyamory. A lot of polyamorous people are leftists. Not everyone. So not everyone who's polyamorous is a leftist, but a lot of far leftist people are polyamorous because that means being in a relationship with more than one person because they believe they are queering the cultural norms around marriage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The reason that the far left wants to abolish the family, and this is a topic I love covering because it's just so dystopian. The reason the far left wants to abolish the nuclear family is not that they want everyone beholden to the government. That's not true. They believe the nuclear family is the literal means of reproduction of capitalism. Okay? So the number one enemy of the far left is always capitalism. They believe that capitalism is reproduced within the nuclear family. No, this is not an excuse to be a degenerate. Do not shill conservative bullshit talking points here. That is a conservative bullshit take. We are dealing in reality. The nuclear family is literally the means of production. When they're talking about seizing the means of production, guys, they're not talking about the factories anymore because most stuff is not produced in a factory. When they're talking about seizing the means of production and reproduction, they're talking about the nuclear family. They're talking about the people because they believe that capitalism as a cultural model is reproduced within the nuclear family. So basically, a man and a woman get married, which is a capitalist relationship to the far left. They have kids within that capitalist relationship. They then raise those kids to believe in capitalist values because they were raised in a capitalist nuclear family. And then those kids grow up to become oppressed workers under capitalism because you have to replenish the workforce when people get old and retire and stuff like that. You have to feed the capitalist workforce. And the reason you need to feed the or how you feed the capitalist workforce, rather, is through parents having kids within the nuclear family, raising them with capitalist values, and then feeding those kids to the owners or the bourgeois or anything like that. So they believe that in order to, and this is all called social reproduction theory, by the way. Social reproduction theory is something you'll hear about on the far left when you really get into the good stuff. Social reproduction theory is the idea is that social systems like the nuclear family and like capitalism will reproduce itself until it is disrupted. So the reason the left wants to abolish the family is because they believe that as long as the nuclear family exists, then capitalism as a cultural model of society will be perpetuated. Okay? 1 in the chat if you understand what I just said. 2 in the chat if you are confused and you need me to explain it again. 1 in the chat if you understand what I just said. 2 in the chat if you are confused and you need me to explain it again. Okay. Now there's a lot of ones, but I want to say if you're new and you're confused about something I just said, don't feel like you can't ask a question. There are people of all different levels here. There are a lot of people who've been watching this content with me for a long time, and so they're going to know more than you. If you are new and you have questions, please don't feel like you can't ask those questions. Just do so in the chat, and I will answer whatever questions you have, and it's totally fine, and you're not dumb for not understanding it because you might be newer, whereas some people have been watching this content with me for a really long time, okay? We want to make sure everyone understands.
rights and remaking of social structures, and especially so in the case of the family. Family abolition, of course, is a subject Michelle's written another book on. Family abolition provides multiple horizons and visions of demolishing an insufficiently resourced institution.
Hang on. This is not a dumb question, Lex. Don't worry about it. Is there something further left than communism? No. Communism is as far left as you can get. Like, this is like revolutionary communism. So we are watching as far left as you can go right now. And by the way, guys, fascists and groypers are not on the left. Fascists and groypers are on the right. This is on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, but it's not a dumb question.
At a moment of social, political, and ecological collapse, alongside the reinvention of child rearing and gestation. Alongside this in the book is a reworking of what caring for other humans looks like or means, from sex work becoming one element of skin work. To people.
Hang on, this is a good question. How will they succeed in the long term if they don't reproduce? I didn't say they didn't reproduce. You gotta listen. Don't put words in my mouth. Don't say things I didn't say. Like, listen, for people who are new, you really have to unlearn the habit of saying things that people didn't say. Did I say they didn't reproduce? I didn't say they didn't reproduce. I didn't say they didn't reproduce at all. So why are you assuming that I'm saying they don't reproduce? Abolish the family communists have kids. Emmy O'Brien has a kid. Emmy O'Brien literally wrote a book about family abolition. Emmy O'Brien has a kid. These people have kids. Socialists don't just abort all their babies. But now they don't raise them in the nuclear family context, though. So they might raise them their ideal is that they want to raise kids in like a commune type environment. Their ideal is that no parental rights, because parental rights are a manifestation of capitalism. Parental rights are a form of private property. So they do want to get rid of parental rights, but they absolutely want to have kids, and they absolutely want to raise those kids on communes where everyone belongs to everyone else. Now, one of the things that's interesting about a lot of communist events that people don't realize, but I go to communist events, and so I know this. Most communist events that I've gone to have childcare at the event. So listen, for people who listen to Tim Pool and you think that communists abort all their kids, if communists aborted all their kids, then why would communist and socialist events literally have childcare built into the event? The reason they have childcare built into the event is people take their kids to communist and socialist meetings and communist and socialist conferences, and then they have a whole childcare unit where they do daycare with the kids, where they play communist games and they learn early communist values, because they're raising all those kids that are going into that childcare program to be good little communists in line with the community. Also, they have ideas about surrogacy and biobags and stuff like that. So there is also some conception of like, we may grow humans, or we may like manufacture humans, or things like that. That is also a thing on the far left.
Trying to survive various forms of detention camps. Gender and transition are also socially and technologically developed.
All good, Chris. Thank you.
And many of the interviewees are trans. I was like, is everyone in the book trans? Is that what's happening? Could you speak a little bit about these visions of care? Maybe for those who haven't read the book yet, and their emergence in different forms of crises. And like, it really felt like transness and queerness kind of lead the way, but I'm not sure it's just that, but yeah.
Yeah, they certainly do lead the way, I would say. And I think that there's this way that, like, in capitalism, right, care is so devalued and so marginalized, and in part because it's feminized. But there's a sort of like mutual constitution there. It's feminized, it's devalued because it's
okay. I want to make sure everyone heard this, because I see some people talking about things in the chat that have nothing to do with what's going on in the video. David, I'm looking at you. This has nothing to do with what's going on in the video, bro. Okay. The communization of care is an important concept to understand, and this is what Imam is about to talk about. Socialists believe that that capitalism basically undervalues care. They believe it undervalues care because care is typically done by women. Women are oppressed via the patriarchy, and they believe that care is typically something that's undervalued. And one of the reasons they want to abolish the family, and this is actually a really important thing to understand, there are several arguments for abolishing the family. One is that it reproduces capitalism, which is their main argument. Another argument for why they want to abolish the nuclear family is because the nuclear family allows for the passing of property from parent to child via inheritance and stuff. And so you can pass down private property, which keeps wealth privatized outside of the hands of collectives. That's another thing they don't like. But one of the things that a lot of people don't understand when they're new to the abolish the family stuff is that the communization of care is intimately linked to why they want to abolish the family. It goes like this. Right now in our society, people are generally restricted to the type of care that their family can afford due to health insurance. So you have the health insurance that your family has, or you have to pay an astronomical amount out of pocket if you have different insurance, but you have access to what the family has via their employer. Some people have better health care than other people. Some people also have more individual wealth than other people, which allows them to purchase additional health care that is not available to everyone. The communization of care is the idea that everyone has access to all of the health care, all of it. This is where universal health care comes from. Everyone has access to all of the health care, regardless of who your family is, regardless of what insurance your job offers, regardless of any private wealth. Everyone has access to the same health care. That is what they mean when they say communization of care. And that is another benefit they see to abolishing the nuclear family.
Like, it really felt like transness and queerness kind of lead the way, but I'm not sure it's just that, but yeah.
Yeah, they certainly do lead the way, I would say. And I think that there's this way that, like, in capitalism, right, care is so devalued and so marginalized, and in part because it's feminized. But there's a sort of like mutual constitution there. It's feminized, it's devalued because it's feminized, and it's feminized because it's devalued. And in a way, I mean, one reviewer described the book as like an economy of care, that like effectively care becomes the primary motive of all kind of social relations. And so, you know, the book, the New York version of the revolution starts with a food riot, and that was very much on purpose, right? The idea that like we are going to first start with taking care of our most basic social reproductive needs. So social reproduction, the act of reproducing ourselves as human beings, right? Food, sex, child rearing, all of this becomes central to how we organize our society, right? That it's central to the commune, not secondary to it, not there to just bolster production for profit, which is how we live under capitalism. So I think that like the queerness and the feminists, right, are both like central to that. It's a complete kind of reordering of the world. And it's, for me, a much more rational one, right? It's one that makes, like, if we made decisions as a society based on how to care for the collective and for the individual, like, we would make much more efficient decisions. We would make decisions that
see, Imam Abdelhadi is basically saying to you guys what I just told you. We need to reorganize the society in order to make decisions based on what is best for the collective, providing care to everyone regardless of their family is, rather than making decisions about what is best for the individual.
That you know, prioritize our collective survival, our planet's collective survival, our continuity. And so the book sort of imagines that once you remove the profit motive, right? Once you remove capitalist social relations, that becomes the primary mode by which both individual and collective decisions are made. So it's really at the heart of the book, and the sort of destruction of the nuclear family, or the replacement of the nuclear family becomes a huge part of that, right? That we imagine a world where who you're related to, who you're married to, who, I don't know that people get married, but, you know, who you have long-term romantic or otherwise relationships with, who you want to live with, that none of that matters for what you have access to eat you know, your clothing, your housing, like all of those things are met. All of those needs are met by the collective, are met by the commune. And that opens up all the space for how people can relate to each other. So instead of going, I always think about these like anti-Soviet, like, you know, we used to have to watch this in high school, you know, they would like make us watch these documentaries about the Soviet Union and like, how, you know,
oh no, we have a retard here. David, we tried to help you. We tried to help you. Okay, Karlyn, it seems to me that you're only trying to sell socialism to your audience rather than critique it. You hear the approach, but you do you. Don't bother banning me. Been around too long to care. David, I'm not going to be the one to ban you. The chat's going to be the one to ban you. One in the chat if we need to ban David to make sure he never comes back. None of us know who David is. None of us know what David cares about. None of us really care who David is. One in the chat if you want to ban David and never hear from him again. Two in the chat if you think that we should keep this jolt of sunshine around since he doesn't understand what it means to study your enemy. And maybe we could teach him. Maybe we could reform him. But David, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. It looks like you've been voted off the island by the community. We don't want you here. And no, we are not critiquing communism. We are learning what real communists and socialists actually believe, which you don't know, David. You don't know. That is a conservative retard that doesn't want to learn, or more likely is too stupid to understand. Exactly. So Imam Abdelhadi was saying there, Imam Abdelhadi was saying exactly what I just told you, which is the reason they want to abolish the family is to make sure that care is extended to everyone. That is what they're talking about, okay? Get rid of the nuclear family and everyone has care. But there's another thing I want to say. Imam Abdelhadi, this is actually kind of funny. Imam Abdelhadi said, I don't even know if people get married anymore. I'm pretty sure Imam Abdelhadi has trouble with men. And I think Imam Abdelhadi might be really bitter about the fact that she can't find a relationship. Do you want to know why? Because on Blue Sky, about a week or so ago, after Imam Abdelhadi participated in a presentation where all they did was whine and complain about me for an hour and a half, and it was great. It was great. But after Imam Abdelhadi was in a presentation where all they did was whine about me for an hour and a half, I communicated with Imam on Blue Sky. And I forget exactly what I said to Imam, but Imam said to me, she was like, Karlyn, don't you know that we're not the reason that you're lonely and can't buy groceries? And I said to Imam, I was like, Imam, I've been married for 14 years. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not lonely. I have a husband. I'm good. And I can also afford groceries, which is also pretty effing great. But Imam Abdelhadi literally said to me like a couple of weeks ago on Blue Sky, she was like, we're not the reason that you're lonely. And now Imam Abdelhadi's bitching about people never getting married. She's having relationship problems. She cannot hold down a relationship and she wants to get married and she can't find anyone who wants to marry her. And so she blames capitalism for the fact that she can't get married and yada, 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 yada. And she's really bitter about it and she's really pissed off because this is within a couple of weeks. She's like, everyone is lonely. Is it like, I'm lonely. I can't get married. No one should get married. She's having relationship problems. And that's fucking funny.
Everything was like gray and everyone lived in the same apartment and like led these like cookie cutter lives.
You can fix her.
And like, you know, whatever, all the critiques of the Soviet, like obviously had nothing to do with that. The actual Soviet Union was all about like filling our heads with like, you know, capitalist propaganda. But what's interesting is like we lead such cookie cutter lives under capitalism, and as a queer person who is constantly like trying to do something a little different, right? Like you butt up against the material constraints, right? The push towards coupledom, the push towards monogamy, the push towards compulsive heterosexuality, all of these things.
Compulsive heterosexuality.
And so what we kind of try to explore in the book is the way that everything opens up and you really do have a diversity of like kinship forms as people are no longer making these decisions based on material interests. They're making them based on affinities, dispositions, availability, etc. So,
and not just about kinship and care, right? Because I think one of the later chapters, you also thinking about the like question of abuse and harm interpersonal like interpersonal violence within the family, or within a
all right, Reagan, I got it.
Within a not family, but within a care unit of between parent and child. And your character speaks through like what happens to their parent, who's kind of who's there's a huge conversation. Everyone who's involved in their lives has a big conversation about it. There's already this kind of structure of support for that person, and the child has multiple other parents to also kind of look out for them, having experienced this harm as a minor. And even that is also in this, like, there are other ways.
The child has other parents to look after them. Let's listen to that a whole bit again. They're talking about what a family model outside of the nuclear family looks like. So they're talking about this idea of families of choice, getting rid of monogamy, they call it forced monogamy, getting rid of parental rights. What does that mean about how the family operates? Listen again.
Availability, etc. So,
and not just about kinship and care, right? Because I think one of the later chapters, you're also thinking about the question of abuse and harm of interpersonal interpersonal violence within the family, or within a not family, but within a care unit of between parent and child. And your character speaks through like what happens to their parent, who's kind of who's there's a huge conversation. Everyone who's involved in their lives has a big conversation about it. There's already this kind of structure of support for that person, and the child has multiple other parents to also kind of look out for them, having experienced this harm as a minor. And even that is also in this, like, there are other ways. I think because this is the question we always get asked as abolitionists, right? Like, what are you going to do with the abusers? And it's say actually the structures that we are within now also don't have the means or the ability to function to really create some kind of system of transformative justice, or not even system, just like a way to do transformative justice, purely because we don't have enough people.
Again, I literally said this earlier, and it sounds like you weren't listening when I said this earlier. Some of them do have kids, and they're still family abolitionists, because this has nothing to do with whether or not they love their kids. This has to do with they think they're going to create a better world. Some of them literally do have kids, and they're still family abolitionists after they have kids, because that has nothing to do with why they have these values in the first place. Please listen the first time I explain something on the next occasion that you're here.
People around to do the care labor that actually entails, which I think is kind of a really interesting vision as well. To link this question to say transformative justice is actually is a practice of care, both in terms of accountability of somebody who's committed an act of violence, and also supporting a survivor.
That's right.
Yeah.
And as you know, it's a practice of care that takes time and energy, and it's often against that constraint that we find ourselves, like when we have these conflicts, even conflicts that are not as I have a conflict with a close friend, and we've been trying to schedule a processing conversation for like 2.5 weeks, right? And it's like we can't seem to like sit down and be like, here are my thoughts and feelings, right? And it becomes even harder when there's abuse on the table or anything else.
Okay, I'm aware we're at 6:45. Maybe are talking. Should I ask this last question, or do you want to flip?
Maybe let's flip. I would love. I want to make sure people get a chance to. I'm excited to ask you my questions. So I love the book. I'm holding up the book in case people haven't gotten it yet. It is so beautiful, and just really, I think, innovative in the way that you talk about how we relate to each other. And I think there's so much, you really embody the ethics that you're advocating for, because I feel like there's so much gentle critique in the book of what we've been doing so far that really hasn't worked for us in movement spaces. So I want to start with this, the book is Abolitionist Ethics for Transfeminist Worlds. And I wanted to ask you, all my questions are really just chances to kind of share the concepts of the book, because I think they're really rich.
Thank you, Cynthia, for your generous donation of all these channel memberships. Congrats to everyone who just got a channel membership via Cynthia.
So I wanted to ask you first to talk about ethics. Why focus on ethics? How do you define ethics? And why should we attune to them in this particular moment, as we're facing these like horrific crises and some of the hardest organizing challenges I think many of us have ever faced?
Thanks for that question. Part of it is because we feel like ethics is a term, like I say we as me and myself and Maker, they would give very different answers also. So get my answers. Thinking about ethics as an alternative frame to doing politics, and in thinking about ethics, it's to really try and center like how we live our lives, what we are doing in our lives, what we have power and agency over. Kind of agency is really the key term here. Partly because we'd obviously, like both of us are writing out of social movements. I've primarily been involved in queer and trans organizing, and some anti-racist, anti-imperial organizing too over the last 15 years in different forms. Sometimes some more explicitly political formations, being like, we're making demands of a state or whatever to end austerity, fund trans healthcare. Sometimes in more collective forms. And ethics is to say, actually, like what we do kind of matters more than the demands we're trying to make of the state, or at least in terms of where we center our activities and our actions and our reflections. That's not to say like people shouldn't be making demands of the state. I think we were just frustrated about being in the grammar, of the political grammar of like, oh, I have politics and I'm going to make a demand of the liberal, neoliberal nation state to give me something that they probably don't want to give me. And maybe there are some times where those concessions are more easily winnable than at others. And in that sense, it's also in the spirit of what abolition is about, which is to really think about how we live our lives, what we're doing with our lives, the forms of behavior we show for each other, how we organize together, how we make how we are in worlds and lives with each other already. And that it's to say like, we can do this now. It's maybe prefigurative politics is a way to be thinking about it, but to really be like, we're not going to wait until the state turn around and give us what we want before we try and create the revolutionary world that we want to exist in.
Okay, so this is actually important. Okay, so what they're talking about here is, yes, they do currently all live under capitalism, okay? The communists and the socialists are very aware that they currently live in a capitalist world. However, because many of them are true believers of their cause, even though they do engage with capitalism, they really do try to build what they want in the future world already today. So they actually have, it's actually like really, it's scarily impressive. The communists and the socialists have a parallel ecosystem. They have a parallel economy, okay? You guys remember a couple of years ago when conservatives were like, we need to create a parallel economy because they were sick of getting canceled off of everything? The communists actually did that. They created their own bookstores. They created their own publishing companies. They created their own organizations. They created their own nonprofits. They created their own collectives. They created the organizations and the systems that they want to see in the socialist utopia. When they run events, they run them as if you are on the commune. You are entering the commune for the day. That is how they run their events. That is how they structure their meetings. They structure their meetings now like they want to see the governance done in the future communist utopia. They're trying to build all of these things that they want to exist in the future, things around mutual aid, things around education, things around publishing, things, all the different things. They're trying to build it right now. Even though they do live in capitalism, they have to engage with capitalism. But, and by the way, a lot of them don't buy homes. Now, like and the reason I bring this up is the most famous, like, quote unquote Marxists that people know about are like the BLM founders, right? And the BLM founders took all this money and they bought these $1 million homes. Most real communists and socialists don't actually do that. They don't believe in private home ownership. They are renters. They have renters unions. They have tenant rights groups. And so even if they could afford to buy a home, many of them don't buy the home because most of them don't believe in private property ownership. Therefore, they are the renters, and then they form the tenant unions and they get all the tenant unions all riled up and shit. And that's what they do. Okay. So I'm trying to articulate that, again, these are true believers. And even though they do exist in capitalism, and yeah, they own expensive computers sometimes and watches and stuff like that, they are still working every single day to build the communist utopia right now. They have the parallel economy that the right wanted to build, but then gave up on after a couple weeks when it was too hard.
So it's kind of like why ethics, I think, also make us a kind of like maybe a dethroned Aristotelian is maybe she's like, we got to throw out quite a lot of Aristotle, but like there's some bits here from like the Nicomachean ethics in particular, where she's like, oh no, like ethics is a useful way to think about it because politics is still about our relationship with the polis, and which in a Scottish context, we're thinking about the city-state, not the polis, which is what Scottish people call the police. But that, you know, that in that doubling, everything is there already, you know, that the polis is already this kind of exclusive city-state world that privileges is already written through the kinds of privileges and hierarchies that we also do want to destroy. So, or dismantle. So yeah, so it's a sense of like, and I feel like I had a dozen conversations with different people saying like, you know, what do you do if you abandon politics? People don't want to abandon politics. Politics is how we understand our politics, you know? And we're trying to not say you have to abandon politics, but we're trying to say there are other ways to think about it, which maybe offer something else that thinking about politics in this form of critique doesn't let us do. So
yeah, I think there's a critique of critique, right, in the
it's critique of critique,
in the book that I find extremely helpful, because I think, and especially as an academic, right, like so much of academic intervention into political, like social movements, has just been critique and deconstruction, right? And offering very little in response, but also just in this kind of like, well, everything you do is stuck in the system anyway, so you're stuck, and like silly you for, and I've seen that destroy social movement spaces.
Yeah, and I think because we get trained into doing that, into making arguments, like I think it's quite interesting going back into the 70s and you see these complaints where people just want to write about how they think things should be, and no one actually wants to do the work.
Like, do the work.
And then meanwhile, you know, if I'm trained through the humanities, you know, kind of really did my my training in queer studies, and critique is what we learn to do. You know, we learn to critique things, and meanwhile we're always like, oh, but how do these things relate to our everyday lives? So if you start at that point being like, how do these things relate to our everyday lives, that doesn't necessitate critique, although critique is obviously kind of important as part of that too.
So speaking of which, you know, the book has implicitly, you know, it sort of questions the emphasis on positionality and privilege and identity categories as ways to structure, especially like social movement spaces and trans and femme spaces. So I'm curious if you could talk more about that, and sort of in a related term, talk about how you see trans and femme, right? The way I understood
good question.
The way I understood the book, you were saying these aren't just stable identities, but they're modalities and frameworks. Can you share more about that for folks who haven't read the book? And
Thank you for that. It's been interesting because we're trying to not be like we're against identity politics, but we're trying to be like, actually, we think of identity in terms of its historical importance, which we're the Marxists.
They're against identity politics.
Like, oh yeah, no, we come from somewhere and we have these lineages and these trajectories that have brought us to where we are now. And meanwhile, I think we really wanted to focus about practices. So again, to come back to this, like, oh, it's really about what we're doing, or how we're trying to work through what we're doing, how we're trying to reflect on what we're doing. Which is to say, we're thinking a lot about both, maybe all the words in trans femme futures being verbs, but maybe trans and futures being the two key verbs in that as well.
Mm.
Trans as a verb promote like prioritizing kind of these questions of practices, this sense of, you know, we always keep coming back to Susan Stryker talking about this refusal of an unchosen starting point to moving towards somewhere else, and the moving doesn't have to be spatial or whatever, but it's to say there's this crux of like refusal, and then
okay, this is a whole lot of word salad, but they're actually waffling around something we discussed at the very beginning, and once you know what they're waffling around, you're going to be able to hear it. So what they're talking about is the idea of a trans future, and what the concept of trans means when you're talking about it in this context. To go back, earlier in the stream, we defined trans in this context as what? We defined it as transcending gender, transforming gender. Trans in this context is not about transition. It's not about transition from man to woman or woman to man. When this person is saying trans, as in a trans future, they are talking about a future that transcends our current reality, transforms our current reality, going beyond what we currently have and into something else. Does that make sense? So now listen to what they're saying again, because it does sound very word salad, because they're not good at explaining this. I know how to explain this because I've been doing this a long time. They're not good at explaining their own ideas sometimes. But if you listen to her, she's waffling, or they, them, whatever the fuck. If you listen to they, them, they're waffling around the idea of transcending. Listen again.
We're thinking a lot about maybe all the words in trans femme futures being verbs, but maybe trans and futures being the two key verbs in that as well. Trans as a verb promote like prioritizing kind of these questions of practices, this sense of, you know, we always keep coming back to Susan Stryker talking about this refusal of an unchosen starting point to moving towards somewhere else, and the moving doesn't have to be spatial or whatever, but it's to say there's this crux of like refusal, and then of also being like, oh, it's really about trying to do something, and that doesn't have to be doing something that succeeds. That can also be trying to do something that is also failing, which is then to say like, oh, there are a series of trans practices that basically anyone can do, and you don't have to be trans to do them, or if you do them, you're trans, like congratulations, you're trans now. And that sounds quite abstract when I say it that way. But we're really trying to think about, obviously we're already talking about this conversation around care. Some of this is really embedded in both like practical everyday forms of care, but also in kind of the infrastructures that we collectively produce, that we kind of have this proposal that like your like transing happens in relation through other people, that we really kind of all enable each other to exist.
Transing happens in relation to other people because we all enable each other to exist. This is not about transitioning gender. Again, being trans is to go beyond. They said it, anyone can be trans. If you go beyond, if you want to transform or transcend our current realities as society, if you want to transcend the current power structure, that's what they're talking about. They're not talking about transitioning your gender. They're not talking about getting gender reassignment surgery. They're talking about transcending capitalism, transcending identity, transcending these socially constructed categories that capitalism has created for us, because that's what they believe men and women are. They don't believe men and women biologically exist. They believe men and women are socially constructed categories that capitalism has created, and their job as queer Marxists is to transcend the socially constructed identity categories. They said it earlier too. We hate identity politics. These people are not engaging in identity politics. These people want to abolish identity. They don't want identity categories to exist. They want a world of they, thems. Equity will be achieved when we are a world of they, thems.
That it's a collective production that's also to try and flip the degrees of power of medicalization through which transness is often historically been and continues to often be framed, right? And femme maybe is like more useful to think about as a modality, and I'm like, maybe we can get to the future, get back to the future. But for us, femme was really I think on the one hand, we think about it's kind of aesthetics and the kinds of relations to the world or to the various worlds, but to like the environment, like there's multiple ways we can think about that, ecologies, but also social ecologies, that feminist is kind of about. And meanwhile, to be like, actually there's something, again, like in the midst of like this contradiction of like care being feminized and the feminization of care and the negativity around that and the denigration of that, is to say, actually, there are a series of practices that come through feminist, femininity, and care, maybe, that actually are really important visions of how the world could be, which could involve, like, say, being open in a way that involves engaging with multiple people to try and figure out how we feel together. Like, they could be like, okay, so the patriarchal approach is like this top-down, like, I say it is so, which is to quote Maker, an exercise that Maker does, and say like, and then the women are left, you know, in this patriarchal structure to do all the work of like, oh, so yeah, I know it sucks. Like, I'm sorry, this is how it goes. Like, what do you think of this? Oh yeah, you know, doing all of that emotional labor in this kind of repressive form.
Okay, I want to talk about what they're saying, but Keith is asking a question. Do they really care about the environment? Yes, they do. And we watched there's a Socialism Saturday called, I think it's like Revolution or Die or something like that. Go watch the Revolution or Die episode of Socialism Saturday because it's specifically about this topic. Do they care about the environment? Yes, but they care about the environment because they think that capitalism has caused climate change, and they think that capitalism or the pursuit of profit over protecting the environment they believe capitalism is literally going to kill us through climate change. They literally believe, yeah, there's a term called green anarchy. Reagan has that in the chat. Like, they believe that capitalism is going to kill us by killing the environment. So do they care about the environment? Yes, because they honestly do believe that we're all going to die. They believe that all of their friends are going to die. They believe they're going to die. They believe their family's going to die. They believe everyone they ever loved is going to die because capitalism created climate change by putting profits before people. So, yes, they do. Let's back up a little bit. So this person is talking about, again, this person is talking about, like, what does it mean to have a trans future? And so what they're trying to do is juxtapose the idea of what we currently have, which is the patriarchy. The patriarchy is the gender hierarchy. The patriarchy is where capitalism created the socially constructed categories of men and women. They put men in the workplace where they had all the power and all the money, put women in the home where they did the unpaid labor of raising the next generation of proletarian workers in the nuclear family. That is called the patriarchy. All right. This is what they believe our current model is. This is the model they want to transcend. How are they going to trans the patriarchy? They're going to eliminate the gender roles, put everyone on the same level, and that is how we transcend gender. Listen.
But also social ecologies, that feminist is kind of about. And meanwhile, to be like, actually, there's something, again, like in the midst of like this contradiction of like care being feminized and the feminization of care and the negativity around that and the denigration of that,
yeah,
is to say, actually, there are a series of practices that come through feminist, femininity. And
this is actually a really good point. And the reason I want to point this out is they keep talking about social relations, right? To the left, men and women are not a biological reality. Men and women are socially constructed categories that capitalism has created, and they have a form of social relation because they're socially constructed categories. They want to deconstruct the socially constructed categories to get rid of the current patriarchal social relations.
Care, maybe. That actually are really important visions of how the world could be, which could involve, like, say, being open in a way that involves engaging with multiple people to try and figure out how we feel together. Like, they could be like, okay, so the patriarchal approach is like this top-down, like, I say it is so, which is to quote Maker, an exercise that Maker does, and say like, and then the women are left, you know, in this patriarchal structure to do all the work of like, oh, so yeah, I know it sucks. Like, I'm sorry, this is how it goes. Like, what do you think of this? Oh yeah, you know, doing all of that emotional labor in this kind of repressive form, and say, actually, that moment of those interactions, not necessarily the drainingness of the emotional labor, but like that moment of emotional connection is what we want to maintain, and is part of how we envision social change happening. And that's not just a organizing strategy, but that is also like just an everyday strategy, right? That is about these questions around openness, it's about engagement, it's about nourishing how we relate to each other, being reflective about that. And yeah, and I think meanwhile, like, we're really thinking about feminists as also in its kind of like, we live through these forms of femininity that are kind of dispossessed in certain ways, that are abject, but they're also spaces in which we find they're forms of expression through which we find joy, through which we find pleasure, through which we find love. And we kind of don't want to throw that away, because we felt so much in the queer worlds that we've been in the last 15 years or so, really have denigrated these things.
Yeah, Tony's real smart, Master Shake.
Transness, you know. And so we really didn't want to give that away either. And that's not to say like feminist is better than bitchness, but it is to say like there's something in feminist that is different from how we think that is, I don't want to say it's just missing in maskedness, but also in being like, we're at this point in queer culture where we can think about these things independently of each other. We don't have to think about bitch femme or masc and femininity and masculinity in relation to each other. They're kind of off doing their own things, and that's really exciting and powerful. So yeah,
there seems to be this fear, like in queer communities, I feel like, that if you expand the definitions of certain things, right, if you're like, oh, transness is a way
Hang on, I'm actually curious about this. We're going to answer W. Everett's question in the chat, so don't answer until I give you the number scheme, okay? Let me read the question. How many people in here now realize that all the conservative and right, even the Democrat talking points, don't work on socialists because none of them understand what they're dealing with? One in the chat, if you're starting to come to some realization that none of the standard conservative right-wing talking points, and not even the Democrat talking points, work on socialists and communists because the people making those talking points don't understand what they're talking about. 2 in the chat if you still think that conservative talking points are great. I actually am curious about the numbers. Yeah, it's a lot of ones. Yeah. See, this is the problem. This is the problem. This is the problem that is a most immediate need for us to solve, because there are millions of people that are being misinformed and lied to by their own influencers because they never took the time to understand the left. And because they don't understand the left, they cannot put strategies in place to defeat them because they do not understand what they're talking about. Yeah, like literally no one in the chat said 2. No one who is here and is participating in the chat said 2, because our fight right now is not even with the left. The left is the final boss. The left is the final boss that we have to defeat. Our fight right now is with conservatives and right-leaning influencers who believe they understand the left when they literally have no fucking idea. And we know they have no idea because we listen to the real far left. We listen to the most relevant far left activists in the country right now. The people that we listen to on this show are the ones driving the agenda on the far left. And if you ask right-leaning media and conservative influence about them, they have no idea who they are. They have no idea what they believe. They don't even listen to what they say. So it's like, there's a whole bunch of people that could be on the team of fighting the left right now, but they are completely uneducated about what they're fighting. And for most people who are listening to conservative influencers, it's not their fault. It's not the fault of the normal people. It's not the fault of the people who are listening to Glenn Beck and listening to Fox News and listening to the Daily Wire and listening to all of the... It's not their fault. They are going to the people they think they need to go to get information. They are seeking information, and the people giving them that information are lying to them and misinforming them because they're more interested in money and status and owning the libs than they are with actually understanding the left. And that is the biggest battle that we have to fight right now. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here because not a single person who answered that question in the chat said that they believe that conservatives understand the left. Not a single person. It was all ones in the chat. Every single person here knows this conceptually, that conservative influencers and conservative pundits and conservative commentators do not understand the left because they don't actually listen to the left. They just come up with bullshit that they make up. That's a really good way to own the libs and to get their fucking talking points out there because they're only trying to win the next fucking election. They're not thinking about the course of human events. They're only thinking about the next election. And so they don't inform their audiences, and then their audiences don't know. And it's not really the audience's fault because they're trying to figure this out, but they haven't been properly informed by the people that they trusted to inform them. That is the biggest battle that we have to fight right now. There are not an insignificant number of conservatives who literally think that I'm an Antifa leftist. Like, really think about this. Really think about this. There are a lot of people out there who are convinced because they were told this by a conservative influencer. They're convinced that I am an Antifa leftist and I'm secret Antifa that is feeding them misinformation because I'm secret Antifa. That's a real fucking thing. This is how bad the situation is with the amount of misinformation on the right. And you know what? We can't control anyone that wants to lie to their audiences or misinform their audiences. If they want to be retards on the internet, they can be retards on the internet. Ain't nothing we can do about that. But understand that our current enemy is not actually on the left. We are trying to understand the left. We are studying the left. We are monitoring the left. We will continue to be the tip of the spear when it comes to understanding what is going on the left. People who watch this content and who watch my show know more about what is going on the left than anyone else in the country right now. And I would bet all the money in my bank account on that. But they're not our current enemy. Our current enemy are influencers and pundits and commentators on the right who continue to lie to their audience and misinform their audience. Because until we fix that problem, until we fix that fucking problem, we can't do anything about the left because we don't have the numbers on our side. But if we can get this information out to normal people, and this is going to be what Occupy Libraries is about, this is going to be what next year is about, guys. We have made so much I cannot believe it's November already. We have made so much progress this year. My work is finally starting to break into the zeitgeist this year. This year we have how many people, I'm just curious, how many people in the chat found me this year? One in the chat if you found my work this year in 2025. Tommy blocked you. Dang, that sucks. You're here for the education. Thank you. My work this year, I've been doing this for 4 fucking years. My work this year has finally broken into the zeitgeist. Look at how many people just found my work this year. Most of the people answering right now just found me in the last several months. So next year, guys, next year, our goal, we all have to do this together, and you guys are going to do it too. This cannot be just me. This is not about making me any sort of internet celebrity or influencer. I don't want to be a fucking internet celebrity. I barely even want to be on video, okay? We all have to participate in this. I am doing everything I can to give you resources, to teach you everything I know. I am trying to download everything in my head that I've learned over the past 4 years to you guys directly so that we can all go out, every single one of us. We all need to go out and educate our friends, educate our family. We need to get at the normies, the conservative influencers and the conservative pundits and the conservative commentators. They are causing a problem right now for me because I don't want the left to win. I don't want to live. I don't freaking want to live in a socialist utopia. I would be against the wall as soon as the socialists took power. They would kill me. And I don't want that. And so if I am trying to avoid with everything that I have being in the socialist utopia, then I need to do what is required. And what is required for us is to defeat the conservative pundits and the commentators who are lying to their audiences and misinforming their audience and get the information out there. And we've got a lot of different ideas and a lot of different initiatives that everyone can work on. And we all need to do this together, okay? That is the only way we even get to the left. We do not get to the left without going through the right. And I've been screaming about this for years, and I'm an unwitting general in this fucking fight, but I will do it. I will tell you guys what needs to be done. I will give you the resources to do it. I need everyone to participate. Thank you, Biotechnic, for the 5 channel memberships. I really do appreciate that. Because this is not about me. This is about we. This is about all of us. None of us want to live in a communist utopia. We don't want Imam Abdelhadi to win. We don't want any of these people to win. And in order to do that, conservative influencers and commentators need to shut the fuck up, and they need to listen for once in their lives. And they need to actually articulate to their audiences what is going on the left. That is our goal. We need to work together to get this information out there. And by the way, guys, no, I don't think the White House knows any of this. And no, I don't think the FBI knows any of this. I don't think they have any idea what they're doing. And I think Antifa violence is only going to get worse in the coming months and years. And I think the only people who actually have any handle on this is the people in our community. That's it. And this is and it blows my mind that this is the case. I'm continually dumbfounded at the fact that this is the case. This wasn't what I thought was going to happen when I started doing this. At all. In any way. But the truth is the truth. And reality is reality. And this is what we have to deal with. So, I hope I didn't blackpill anyone. But if you guys don't participate, we're all fucked. And the only way we're going to not be fucked is if we all work together. And so that's what we're going to do. Okay? That is what we're going to do.
You know, is a verb. Then the spaces that are built, you know, by and for trans people
this
are
is our
going
struggle.
to be run
Our
over,
struggle.
right? By like people
Our
whose
struggle.
experiences
I'm gonna
are
write.
not.
Oh God, like I need to write another book. Like I need a hole in the head. I'm already working on like 4 or 5 different books at right now, and none of them are really getting the attention they deserve. But I want to write a book. Oh shit! Here's what I need to do. Here's what I need to do. Are you guys ready? I need to write a manifesto called My Struggle or Our Struggle. Probably Our Struggle. I'm gonna write a manifesto called Our Struggle that lays out all of this. And I'm going to sell it as a book with like a little introduction to the far left or something like that. I don't know. I need to think this idea through, but I'm definitely envisioning right now some sort of, hang on. I'm envisioning right now some sort of manifesto that is just titled Our Struggle. And it talks about the struggle of the fight against the conservative influencer. And it talks about how they fuck everything up and how we can't actually fight the far left because none of the conservative influencers understand it. And then it'll lay out some general operating principles about who the far left is and what they believe and the things that we need to fight against. And I'm going to release a fucking manifesto. And it's going to be called Our Struggle, and it's going to be great. I think this is a really good idea. And it will be distributed, and you guys get to distribute it around. And oh shit, wait. It's going to be, we're going to make a zine. Yeah, we're going to make a zine, and we're going to hand it out at Occupy Library events. This is going to be the promotional vehicle for the maybe it'll even be like it's a zine. We have to fucking make, the Protocols of Karlyn. The Protocols of Karlyn coming in 2026. Our Struggle, the Protocols of Karlyn.
Whose like experiences of the material world are not constrained by being trans, right? Like that maybe they're not facing a struggle for healthcare. They're not facing day-to-day violence. They're not, facing the same like legislative assaults. I'm just, you know, and it feels like you're writing from a place that's more confident, right? Like that's sort of a little bit seems not as concerned with this question. Like, did that question, I'm sorry, this wasn't in my question,
No,
but
it's
I'm
okay.
just responding.
Yeah. No, of course.
Did that come up for you as like a problem, or what would your response be to that concern?
I guess part of it is like,
somebody
we don't want to do that policing because the state is already doing that policing for us.
Right.
And in relation to, you know, thinking about the legislative restrictions that are in the works here or that are being installed elsewhere, like, or in various parts of the world, but like, you know, through, I just call it the ruling, like this thing that happened with the Supreme Court earlier this year. It's just being ruled over. It's been going on for hundreds of years. They decided to come back for the trans people in this country. But like, part of how I responded to that is like, oh, you know, there's various protected characteristics that you can acquire, right? They included like being disabled, and being trans in how it's encoded in the law is one of them. And so it's like, you know, like, I don't want to be flippant in this, like, stop being cis, but to be like, actually, no, you can be with trans people in various ways. And part of that is what that refusal could actually mean practically. And so, because this is also part of the thing that we wanted to shift, and maybe this is to kind of second guess the next question a little bit, but to say, like, we really also wanted to pull apart these divisions, including of cis and trans, or trans and cis, and say, like, because I think queerness's power has been through its openness towards multiplicity and change. And I think in that then face the contradiction of like, so what does it mean when there are people who've like lost everything to their queerness, and then there are people who've lost nothing? And how do we exist in relation to each other? But that's interesting, is actually about how we exist in relation to each other, and how we build a community that it holds all these kinds of, build a community.
Hang on, we got a super chat from W here. Sorry, didn't mean to bring a downer to the class. No, that was awesome. Actually, that was the opposite of a downer. I was just wondering, because this is important. Here's a little drop in the bucket of the fascist fund. Thank you, W. And again, it wasn't a downer, bro. That was a motivational class. That was awesome.
See how we exist in I don't like the word community, but you know, how do we exist in a social relation to each other that understands all of these heterogeneities and differences? Because that's really the work that we all have to figure out how to do at this point in time, right? And not just queer and trans people. And yeah, and so I think there's something in that of being like, okay, we want to unpack these problems, because actually we're way more interested in being in relation to you rather than being divided and separated and othered, saying, oh, these things are for cis people, these things are trans people. Which obviously is the struggle of what's happening in terms of this encoding, you know. I think in terms of, I've lost the trail a little bit of what you were asking.
No.
But what we were really seeing is like, one of the things that we talk about in the book, in the third chapter especially, which is kind of the chapter about liberalism and politics and the law and bureaucracy and stuff, is about the infrastructure of policing gender in the way that the state seems to want to maintain or policing sex, I should say, is already kind of in there in the architecture of what is called the hostile environment here, which is how the UK has been policing migrants and refugees, right? To quote Theresa May, who was Prime Minister, but was in charge of was Home Secretary.
Well, the easiest way to send me things is to DM me on Twitter. But what I will say is, I'm not really, and I know when people send me stuff, they mean well. And so I'm not trying to like make people feel like they shouldn't send me things, because you always should send me things if you want to. But like, the things that I am most interested in are primary sources from the left. So I'm just going to say it. If you send me an article written by a right-leaning commentator, I'm not going to read it. If you send me a Twitter thread from a right-leaning commentator or pundit, I'm not going to look at it. And it's and you know what, I'm sure you had good intentions when you sent it, but like, I know exactly what I'm getting when I look at stuff like that, and it's never good, and it's never a good use of my time. So I only am interested in like primary source stuff from the left. So something the left has written, an event the left is organizing, some sort of spy stream that we can do, some sort of zine that you saw, or a photo that you took in your community of a piece of graffiti or something like that. If you're finding zines and graffiti and all sorts of crazy wacky leftist shit in your town and you want me to see it, by all means send it to me. But like, if you want to send me things that are like stuff you got from like a conservative pundit or commentator, I'm almost never interested in it. So yeah, you can always DM me on Twitter, and that's totally fine.
At the time, like 10 years ago, she was like, we want to make Britain a hostile country for migrants and refugees, hostile environment. And so in that infrastructure is all of like, this stuff's already like legislative on the books. And I was always like, you know, this is like a wet dream for Trump. You see it when, as soon as he gets elected, that Theresa May's there hanging out with him on the first week, you know, in his first 10 days in office. And these infrastructures are also partly what we're trying to challenge. That's to say they are legal infrastructures. It means that people have, it's about document checks, it's about passport checks in a way that is now so insidious in our everyday lives that we take it for, it's off, like you can take it for granted or you can ignore it if you're privileged. But it's simultaneously all these things that we're trying to unpick. So, okay, so if people are literally trying to run by documents, firstly, how do we not do that? How do we make sure our communities are not based on those terms? And secondly, what do we do to actually make sure our social worlds are not constituted through these divisions? Because that's also what we see, especially in queer, like LGBT communities, about like questions around racism. And it's like, no, like if whiteness is already constitutive of your space, like you've already kind of done something wrong. And there's a whole series of practices and ways of inviting people into the space that might help shift that. But you might actually end up with the second set of contestations, which is the problem of inclusion, which is like people of color get included. It turns out the people who've invited us didn't want us here in the first place, or they feel awkward about it, and they're not able to do the self-reflexive work of feeling through those emotions, of undoing all of that. And because that's hard work, and it's way easier to be like, hey, yeah, let's get in league with the liar who makes us feel good, you know? Like,
yeah.
To go back to what you were saying, not to say that everyone who's racist is a fascist, but hey.
Sure.
What?
And yeah, and I think that's really these questions.
That's weird.
Like, okay, so how do we understand that separability or these forms of social division is like a really key dynamic of the contemporary social world that we're in, the contemporary this like legal political bureaucracy that we're facing in our everyday lives, that's making our lives less livable. And you know, and that's that level of like housing, healthcare, education, work. But also to say like there's so much to also turn the reflection back to ourselves and be like, okay, so how are we actually complicit and implicated in these forms of social division? And like complicity is a key tool that I can talk about more, but like maybe to focus on separability in this moment and just be like, actually no, like there are ways of unmaking these worlds and ensuring these divisions are like that we really embrace the possibilities of multiplicities in our worlds, that we really want to focus on. And that includes like rethinking about what solidarity also is as well, because I think sometimes even the forms of solidarity that we practice also reproduce those things, which sounds counterintuitive, but is maybe also real. So yeah.
Yeah, I want to come back to the solidarity question. I wanted to say, you know, it's interesting because I think a lot of the dynamics that you're describing also come from like that. So much of the way that some of our communities are structured flows from the kind of material structure of like the human rights, the like rights-based model, the nonprofit infrastructure that's been set up where you're competing over small amounts of resources, and they're often sectioned off based on these like identity labels. And we've often reproduced that even in spaces that are not primarily driven, you know, by the nonprofit model. And even though I think, you know, the current attack on NGOs and all this like is horribly destructive in some ways, I'm also curious to see what will emerge from a world in which like there's no nonprofit funding, like whether we are like, you know, on the one hand of like, It's like, okay, I think a lot of people have done a lot of good within that structure, have used it to the best of their ability, even though they've been critical of it. And it's also been counterinsurgent, like in many ways, right? And so it's going to be interesting, at least in the US, where that system is falling apart.
I keep coming back to something that I learned/heard during the kind of like during BLM in 2014 here, which was there. I remember kind of asking this question.
This is one of the 5 or 6 books that I'm working on right now. Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm also working on, and I really do hope to have this up by the end of the year. And I've just been so busy. But like things are starting to slow down. So what I traditionally know is that like things slow down for the holidays, like from Thanksgiving to Christmas, things get pretty quiet. There is still one more trip I'm going to do this year. So there is one more event that I need to go to this year that I can't tell you guys what it is, but it's going to be awesome. It's going to be in a couple weeks. Anyway, so there is still like one more event I need to do, but like typically things start to slow down before Thanksgiving and kind of stay slowed down through December. And so I really do hope, I'm trying to build a dictionary on the Decode the Left website right now. That's one of the 8,000 projects I have going. And so I do want to do this. I want to publish an online dictionary, and I want to publish like an actual dictionary. And I have like, it's like half done. It's in progress. So that's one of the things that I do want to do. Yep, we are doing a zine library. Yep, we are already doing that. That is another project.
Amrit Wilson, who's a really important South Asian feminist writer who's been active since the 70s, writer and organizer, about like, what do you do when they cut all the funding to the NGOs? And she was just like, oh, you know, in the 70s, we didn't have any money, but we had to do all this work anyway, because that was just our lives, right? We were experiencing domestic abuse. Nobody was listening to us, or the state provided very limited resources to support, especially like Black and brown women who were experiencing domestic abuse and whose status was also tied to being married, you know, like legal status to be in the UK, say, was being tied to marriage. But simultaneously, also the people who were doing that work were also, who maybe worked for the state, were also like South Asian or Black, right? And and that these forms of care that we need those needs will always be present until they can be met. And that will exist with or without an NGO industrial complex. And how we organize around that is key. And I think for me, COVID-19 was such a key moment of that, because it was also like, oh, you know, firstly, we felt like we kind of knew what to do because we've been doing mutual aid around trans healthcare for many years before that. But also that, it showed that we as queer and trans folks have these kind of skills because we're already thinking about, oh, there are these needs. We can try and meet them together by organizing in this way. And that's not to say it's all like roses and dandy, but it was still like, there was a sense of what we can do in response, which I think in the face of either despair or powerlessness, when the state makes you feel powerless, and the despair is the political situation or the crisis that you're facing together, that there are these ways of being together and of doing things. And that's, I think, like, it's really, I mean, part of the joy of being looking about your book and being like, that's like that's what births the commune form. I mean, not to say that revolutionary violence isn't also key to or the collapse of state power or the police, but it is to say, these moments, these practices do really matter, and they do show the way of how we can possibly live. And I really feel that now around trans healthcare here, being like, oh, you know, people are just doing it in a way that shows the clinic is almost defunct, or it's there for very limited, it doesn't offer what it's supposed to, and people aren't waiting around for that for those breadcrumbs.
Yeah, which is what queer people have always done, right? Like, is to provide, like, to care for each other outside of these structures. I want to end, like, last question on this question of solidarity, right?
Let's talk about solidarity in a second. I want to answer this question in the chat though, real quick. Hang on. Where is it? How can we find these events in our areas to get information to you and the public? Apologize if this has already been discussed. oftentimes when people come across events, it's like they just find them. You might see like a flyer in a supermarket or like a coffee shop or somewhere like a dispensary or something like that. Like the best way to find out what communists and socialists in your area are doing is to find the meeting spaces. So find the radical revolutionary bookstores, find the collectives, find the meeting place for the Party for Socialism and Liberation. You can go into those spaces and they're not going to bother you or anything, but there'll be flyers on the wall, especially if you can find radical revolutionary bookstores. There will be flyers on the wall for what they're doing. They'll be hung on signposts outside of it and stuff like that. So most of the time when people see stuff and they send it to me, it's like they've encountered it in their community in some way. Like they saw a flyer, they saw a sticker, or they saw this, or they saw that, or they got an email, or they saw something at their kid's school or something like that. But if you want to be proactive about it, starting with the radical revolutionary bookstores in your area is like a really good place to start. Let's see.
So it's 7:10.
Okay. Should we switch
read? But I'm going to read the bit on solidarity. So I'm going
okay. You go for it then. Go ahead.
But no, but why don't you read first?
Oh, me. Okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna read I forgot that we were reading. I think that's why I was like, but I'm gonna read. I'm gonna share my screen so that folks can follow along if they would like.
Okay, Mom, read your book to us, please.
I feel like this is not showing you anything except.
Oh, we've got like a bar of your pointer.
That's
and
not
your...
helpful. Like, I don't know.
On my screen, it's like a little green share button just down at the bottom in the very, very middle.
Yeah.
But it's not doing it.
Oh, here. I found it. I found the right. So now you can see this, right?
Cool.
Yeah. So this is from the second chapter of the book that I am interviewing Kaukab Hassan and asking about the events of the final Intifada.
Intifada means worldwide socialist revolution.
Tell me about the day the border fell. And they say, it was the most beautiful day of my life. There had been marches, so many marches. There was the sense that as a movement, we had tried guerrilla warfare on its own. And it hadn't worked. So there had to be both a military presence and just mass uprising. People in Kataib would work on bombing the borders, blowing up military outposts and all that. But most people were just organizers, and they'd work on the marches. The marches were like big fucking parties. It's where everyone let out steam from the stress. The stress of
Okay, so a mom right now is reading her book. This is something that her mom wrote in Everything for Everyone. This is one of the interviews. So what I want you to hear from this is how socialists think. What did they say? The marches were like parties. The protests were like parties. The marches were that was their definite, like normal people go to an actual party or they go to a club or they go to a concert or something like that. Socialists go to marches. They don't have to be paid to be there. The whole paid protester thing is so batshit stupid. They don't have to be paid to go there. They are going to their party. They're going to their club. They're going to their rock concert. They have fun. Marches are fun to go to, guys. Protests are fun to go. There's music. There's chanting. There's dancing. Hang on. God damn. This is their social life. There's dancing. There's costumes. There's camaraderie. There's food. There are food vendors there. It's like you're going to a street fair and everyone has signs and they're all chanting their chants and all this stuff. You feel like you're part of the group. They don't need to be paid to do this.
That as a movement, we had tried guerrilla warfare on its own.
It's a block party. It's a block party.
And
exactly. It's a block party.
So there had to be both a military presence and just mass uprising. People in Kataib would work on bombing the borders, blowing up military outposts and all that. But most people were just organizers, and they'd work on the marches. The marches were like big fucking parties. It's where everyone let out steam from the stress of the random bombings, the stress of the raids, all of it. We cried and we sang and we danced. The Debka lines were bigger than you'd ever seen. There was a big march that day. It was supposed to be the biggest one, but people were worried that everyone was getting tired of being out and about all the time. We worried no one would show up. But then the Israelis, they attacked a school bus that morning. They straight up shot up this bus, killed all the kids on their way to school.
This is talking about Israel and Palestine, guys. Everyone understands that. Like, the Free Palestine thing has been a thing a long time on the left. This was written years ago, but it sounds a lot like what's happening today, which is what's creepy about it. But what she's talking about is Israel Palestine.
This photo lit up on ours of the bus in tatters, bits of flesh everywhere. It was horrifying, and everyone came the fuck out. Like, seriously, all of Gaza marched that day. At least 1 million people marched to the border. We stood there, and the army started shooting at us, and we started shouting, "More will come. More will come. More will come." Because it was true. More would come. It was literally do or die. The soldiers were overwhelmed and backing up. They had no real strategy. Ours was to do what we had always done as Palestinians: refuse to stop existing, refuse to disappear. Those of us that were armed started shooting at them. Some people made Molotov cocktails. And of course they shot at us. But when our Shohada would fall, more would come. They couldn't stop us. They started to see that. This woman got on the mic, a comrade, I forget her name.
Comrade.
She was killed a few days later. She grabbed this megaphone and started shouting in English, "Drop the gun and run." It became a chant, and everyone picked it up. Hundreds of thousands chanting at these soldiers, "Drop the gun and run." And eventually they did. They dropped their guns and they ran. And to tell you the truth, we didn't run after them because it wasn't about them. It was about us, how big and beautiful we were in that moment, how unstoppable. We knew that we had done what our parents and grandparents had dreamt of doing. We knew that nothing would ever be the same again. They were what Darwish had called them, abirun, passers-by. Us, Palestine, that was forever.
All right, I just want to make sure people understand this. The left perceives the Palestinian struggle against the Israelis to be a communist or socialist struggle of the proletarian versus the oppressor or versus the bourgeois. Israel are the settler colonists who stole the land from the Palestinians and privatized it under the oppressive force of capitalism and made it exclusive to them. The Palestinians in this case are the ones who are oppressed, who had their land stolen, who are the proletarian, who are in the indigenous people who are being oppressed by the evil bourgeois capitalist that is Israel. It is not about Israel being Jewish. It is not about Palestine being Muslim. They don't think about it in that way. They think about it as oppressor versus oppressed. Queers for Palestine means anti-capitalist for Palestine because queer is an anti-capitalist political ideology. That's what it means. When they say intifada, they do not mean kill all the Jews like the conservative retards would have you believe. They mean worldwide socialist revolution. They view the Palestinians to be in a decolonization uprising against their bourgeois capitalist oppressors. That's what's going on, okay? And so what Imam just read you was the section of her book where she is visioning how the Palestinians overthrow the Israeli oppressors by continuing to protest, continuing to march, getting the Israelis to drop their guns and run. That is what she just said. What she just said is, here is how we decolonize Palestine. Here is how we overthrow the oppressors. No one said anything about Israel being Jewish. They do not care that Israel is Jewish. No one said anything about the Palestinians being Muslim. They do not care that the Palestinians are Muslim. That's not the point. The point is the oppressor versus oppressed narrative, where Israel are the oppressors and Palestine is the oppressed. And that is what the Free Palestine movement is about.
I will stop there. Thanks, y'all. And I'll pass it on. Nat.
It's really devastating. Beautiful. Right. Right page here. Okay, sure. You see my screen?
Hey, thank you, Maine. I appreciate it.
why do we emphasize agency when we think about solidarity? Is solidarity not reaching out to people in situations which you might not be able to do something about? And in times of crisis, allowing people to reach in? Robin Kelly, in a brilliant talk given at the LSE in London, made the argument that solidarity is working for total liberation. This means in part that one works based on where one finds oneself, in connection to one's surroundings, to the surroundings one is in. Solidarity entails enabling one's actions and those of others, creating a context to build power, presence, and possibility. It also means that one questions what tools, methods, or forms one uses to approach organizing and who these tools benefit. For whom do they keep worlds open, and for whom do they close them? Complicity asks questions about entanglement and brings to one's attention resistance and action against forms of organization. Sometimes this means protesting content or the absence of it, and sometimes it means disrupting forms of organization, which can take many direct and indirect forms in itself. Reminding ourselves of Perry Zern and Arjun Shankar, who present curiosity as counterpoint to indifference and imposition, we find forms of solidarity that rest on difference without separability. In the face of objectification and marginalization within the dynamics and effective economies of separability, solidarity creates vibrations that allow one to break out of patterns of thought and feeling, which may otherwise keep one stuck in commitments that benefit the status quo. Breaking indifference by means of openness allows one to be touched by situations of immiseration, injustice, and hierarchy. It entails cultivating and being animated by a sense of empathy in the unbearable light of injustice. It may entail an active practice, in Saidiya Hartman's words, of loving what is not loved. Through these senses of feeling, which are hopefully grounding and need not to be exiled towards hopelessness, to establish or undertake concrete actions. Not all actions that comprise solidarity are directly relational, but they are informed by a sense of connection. For instance, some forms of redistribution of material resources are not immediate, and the unlearning of assumptions requires self-study. However, solidarity as activity toward total liberation needs collective action and thus needs greater relationalities. Oh, sorry, I haven't gone down. Apologies. I'm not very good at this. This is why I don't read off the screen. We hold that these should not be hierarchical, to allow space for different focus points and different strategies, and not subsuming different struggles under a single form of action. A focus on agency and solidarity takes the pressure off a focus on knowledge, i.e. subjectivity, which in turn enables holding various perspectives at the same time. Shifting the primacy in social change from knowledge to action alleviates the need to have a single coherent vision of what liberation and oppression look like. This might lead to a collective of intimacies, to use Jennifer Nash's term, where different approaches that address separability can come together as active solidarity. Such active solidarities can take the form of delightfully autodidactic approaches that freely draw from different sources and are not subject to disciplinary constraints, an improvisation that keeps patriarchy on the back foot. A solidarity freed from disciplinary registers can cooperate across imposed boundaries, and it remains solidarity as long as it aims at total liberation. Thanks.
That means liberation from capitalism. That was a lot of word salad. That didn't really say it. I mean, non-hierarchical. Obviously, Marxism is non-hierarchical, but
thank you both so much for that absolutely fascinating conversation. That was an absolute joy to listen to. Right, I know that we have quite a lot of people here today, so let's open it up for the last sort of 10 minutes.
For people who are new, we always love Q&A on Socialism Saturday, because So oftentimes people who are new will comment on the fact like socialists look like they're reading a script. They are usually reading a script because they prepare a written script ahead of time. So they script out what they're going to say and then they read off their script. It's not that someone else is writing it for them. They're writing it, but they're doing a presentation, so they're scripting it, okay? When we get into the Q&A, they have to answer questions extemporaneously off the top of their head. So they tend to say many more of the quiet parts out loud in the Q&A than they do in the presentation because they're reading off a script in the presentation, but in the Q&A, they actually just have to talk without thinking about it first. So that's why we always love Q&A.
Does anyone have any questions? You can access the Q&A or the chat. Just pop them in there and then we will read them out. In the kind of awkward silence when people construct their question and put it together and get up the courage to type it out. Let me keep half an eye on that. And
yeah, it's like in college.
That's exactly
correct.
Question?
It's exactly like college.
So yeah, I was really curious for both of your work. What kind of evidence, what kind of records, objects, traces do you hope that current and future activists will archive or preserve? I guess for Eman, I'm thinking about that tantalizing little mention of this like public archive in New York that your oral histories are going into. And for Nat, I'm kind of thinking more generally about the work that you're doing now and the sort of traces, objects, records that you'd like to see kept.
Yeah, I mean, so much of what we do in movement feels so ephemeral, like it just kind of appears and disappears. And I worry about this question of archiving all the time, especially as we
Me
move to
too,
like digital
Mom.
forms that I think
Me
are
too.
harder for future historians to hold. And I actually think that's why oral history.
Just to make it really clear for people, one of the things I'm deeply committed to is archiving our perspective. Archiving not only what they're doing, I want to create archives of what the left is doing, but I want to create archives of analysis that are from our perspective. So my Center for Left-Wing Studies, the nonprofit, that is about creating an archive. Archiving is going to become deeply important, guys. We need to archive this time period. It's boring. It's not sexy. It's not going to get on TV. It's not going to do any of those things. But you have to understand that we are entering into a really interesting time period, and we are probably already in it, in which we have to tell our story. We have to make sure that history knows that we existed and that our perspective existed and that we tried to do everything we could. And we tried to archive this stuff, and we made a historical record of what the left was doing. We made a historical record of how they were taking over these institutions, all the different inflection points. We are creating this archive for history. This is not for now. This is for 50 years from now, 100 years from now. This is for posterity, because I want to make sure that their story is not the only story that's told. I want our story to be a story that's told as well. And as we all know, victors write the books, victors write the history. But when people are doing research, they always end up finding stuff like this, right? So archiving, making sure this story is documented, that is something I am deeply committed to.
Histories are actually going to be even more important going into the future. But you know, I think about these like snippets of like videos and photos that people take at all of these events, and you know, I don't know where they go after, but I hope that they sort of emerge into the future as like records of all the things that we were able to put together despite of and against the state. So yeah, I think about that a lot, you know, as I've done some archival research. It's not my main method, but when I've like gone into the archives, I'm like, oh, what are our archives going to look like, given that we have so little in the material form?
We make
yeah,
our
it's a
own
good
archive.
question. I have more like, it's me more saying I don't know, and I'm worried. Is more my answer than a real answer. Nat, what do you think?
I should have like a preservationist argument, but maybe I'm thinking a lot about. I spend loads of time like looking at old newspapers from the 70s.
Yeah.
But all the little things, badges, banners, bigger things, banners. I think that we make things that we don't think are gonna have relevance and the like for people ahead of us, but then maybe oral histories, historiography, whatever, us doing archival research, like we're actually making the relevance. That's literally what the work that we do, you know, making things relevant in a time that was unforeseen. And yeah, so I'm just like, I'm between this mix of like, on the one hand, thinking about the kind of importance of security and the work that we're doing and that we need to be able to let go of things. You don't have to save every single conversation or group chat or whatever. But please, everyone switch to Signal already if you haven't done so. But next to that being like, actually it is really important that people who are doing groups, if you've got some material physical traces that you want to preserve, find a way to preserve them. I think a lot about the various kinds of feminist and queer archives we've got here in Scotland, right? And I'm working on some stuff at the moment from kind of like the what's the way to describe it? Socialist feminist organizing in the early 70s in the UK and its interrelationship with gay liberation. And I'm trying to write about a particular branch of the Gay Liberation Front who I have no idea if they have an archive. Like I can't figure it out because they're from a random town in the northwest of England and not from London.
Britta, this is very nice for you to say. New respect. Karlyn's knowledge in this stuff is phenomenal. In about 5 years, she's consumed and analyzed the history, mutations, and psychology of it and is caught up to it in real time. Yeah, I also drove myself actually insane and basically became a nihilist and basically became a fascist because I'm basically a nihilist because I think we're totally and completely fucked. And so I lost my sanity in the course of the last 5 years, Britta. But yeah, I understand this on a level that no one else, I think, in the country understands it. That is my lifetime. Do I believe in reincarnation? Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And as a result, they have a really different narrative, such as there was no like lesbian gay split in their GLF. And obviously there were trans people involved too. Compared to what happened in
better
London,
than me turning into a Zionist, right?
Well, the lesbians left and the trans people got thrown under the bus, you know. Hey, 1972.
Just think, guys. Just think. Everyone for years, because they didn't understand what I was doing. Everyone for years thought I was copying James Lindsay. We don't hear that anymore, do we? Do you guys remember like 3 years ago? People are like, Karlyn is just copying James Lindsay. When I was never copying James Lindsay, I was very specific about this. Like I wanted to do something completely different. And everyone just kept saying I was copying James Lindsay over and over and over again. And they aren't saying that anymore, are they? Because James went insane and turned into a Zionist cuck. And I went insane and actually hinged into reality and gave people a gift in this world of actually knowing what the left is doing. But isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? The criticism I used to hear for years was, you're just like James Lindsay. No one says that anymore.
And yeah, so I don't know. I'm always just like, please keep things. I can't really talk because I think about all the groups that I have and like, who's got the Smash the GIC banner we painted in 2017? Has anyone got that? Does anyone know where it is? I don't know. So
And I believe there aren't any questions. I think everyone's still like thinking and mulling over and absorbing everything that you've been
Everyone's
saying.
Making dinner. That's good.
At the same time,
answered
mulling
them
and
all.
absorbing. You answered all of them.
And I've got a question otherwise for Eman. Can I ask? Maybe?
Oh, yeah.
Which is on this thing about the relationship between, I was wondering if you could speak about the relationship between queer and trans embodiment and memory. And maybe this is about memory or memory politics. Do you see your book as a work of queer memory? Beyond the narratives movements, a work of queer memory beyond the narrative moments where this is implicit. Let's think about if social, political, and ecological structures of the commune
are inaugurated through queer and trans practices, how will this affect or even center the practices of memory that cultures of queer and transness hold sacred?
Wait, say the last part again.
If the social, political, and ecological structures of the commune are inaugurated through queer and trans practices, say queer and trans people leading the way, how will this affect or even center the practices of memory that queer and transness hold sacred? Maybe I was thinking a little bit about how oral histories allow for another narratives to come forward that say official histories, even of movement histories, interface.
Yeah.
You know, we see this a lot with gender and yeah.
Yeah, I love this question, and I've never gotten this question before. I'm obsessed with memory. I think about memory all the time. I mean, it's very Palestinian of me to be obsessed with memory. It's like kind of our biggest obsession, besides, staying alive. But there's this, I do think the book is a book of queer and trans memory. And in a way, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I think, I have some ideas, obviously. But I think being able to look back and see how queer and trans people saw themselves as part of the transition, right? Like, it's such a queer book, it's such a trans book. And this kind of the centrality of queer and trans modalities and practices as like key to a revolutionary transition that's not liberal, that's not about
liberal
rights-based frameworks, that like really rejects like the version of queer and trans advancement that has been handed to us by the last like 30 years, especially. And that basically, and that takes very seriously in the interdependence of everyone, right? That kind of tries to embody the things you talk about, in Transform Futures. So I think regardless of what happens in the future, like, I hope that that's one of the roles that the book plays, right? As a space to analyze like how radical queer and trans practices like envisioned futures. But I also think that, imagining ourselves like in...
Well, Steve, the reason you say this is because you're not listening and you don't know what you're talking about. Let me just be very blunt. I still see the same thing with the left. They all live in a fantasy land where they are saving the human race from itself, and reality is they're just self-loathing losers. Hey, Steve, right now your kids are being educated by them. Your kids are being educated by them because they own the public schools, they own the colleges and universities. There is not a single person who has ever put their kid in public school that kid has not been educated by a socialist or communist. So if they're just self-hating losers, congratulations, bro. You are sending your children to be educated by self-loathing losers. Your problem is that you don't understand the left. Your problem is you've consumed way too much conservative bullshit content. Your problem is you are unwilling to listen and learn about what's actually going on. And your problem is that you need to position these people as beneath you in order to feel morally superior so you can do your self-righteous bullshit. I'm sure you're also a Christian and you have a lot of Christian righteousness in you, and you need to feel like you are putting the sinner in their place or some such bullshit like that. But the fact of the matter is, your kids are learning from these people. Your kids are being indoctrinated by these people. These people own every major institution in society. You own no of the major institutions in society because your team lost, and your team lost decades and decades and decades ago. And then you just started spewing bullshit like they're mentally ill and they're self-loathing losers and we're winning and they're like, do you what? Oh, your kids are grown. Oh, your kids are grown. So you already put them through the school where they were educated by the self-loathing losers. Congratulations, Steve. Not smart enough to be here, I don't think. One in the chat if we need to ban Steve. Two in the chat if we should give him another chance. One in the chat if Steve's got to go because he's not listening and he's not smart enough to be here. Two in the chat if we should give him another chance. Lots of ones. Couple twos, though. Some people are fighting the fight for Steve. Steve, convince me that you learned something based on what I just said. Because right now the chat wants to forgive you, Steve. I'm still not convinced. Steve, I need your next chat to convince me that I shouldn't ban you. Convince me that you listen to anything I just said. Because if you don't convince me that you listen to what I just said, then I'm going to ban you regardless of what the chat says. But the chat's giving you another chance, so I'm giving you another chance, Steve. And the other chance that I'm giving you is to chat in right now and convince me that you listen to what I just said. And if I'm not convinced that you listen to what I just said, then you're going to get banned. This is your second chance, Steve. The chat doesn't want me to ban you. The chat wanted me to give you a second chance. I'm giving you a second chance. The second chance is convince me that you listened to what I just said. No public school? Nope, Steve, that doesn't convince. No, Steve, I'm giving you one more chance. Because that doesn't actually convince me that you just listened to what I just said. One more chance, Steve. Your next chat will either convince me that you listened to what I just said, or it's going to be the chat that gets you banned. Which is it? Convince me you listened to what I just said. You don't know what I just said. That is a you problem. That is not a me problem, Steve. Because if you're not going to listen to me, there's literally no point in you being here. This is my fucking classroom, Steve. This is my fucking classroom. This is not your classroom. Convince me you listened to what I just said, and you got 30 seconds to do it, bro. No rewinding and listening again. We have a show going on here. We've stopped the entire show just for you. Convince me you listened to what I just said. I'm giving you 30 more seconds. Well, that's not exactly what I said, was it, Steve? That's not exactly what I said. You want one more try? That is not, I did say that, but that was not actually the point I was making. So now it's time to find your intellectual integrity, if you have any. What was the point in what I just said? Last chance, Steve. I've already given you more chances than I should have. What was the point in what I just said? Was the point in what I just said that you're a Christian, which is obviously true? Was that the point I was making, or was I making a different point? Because right now what you're telling us is you weren't listening. And that is a pretty big fucking problem for me, Steve, since you're in my classroom. You seem to type just fine on your own earlier, so what's the problem now? What was the point in what I just said? Answer the fucking question. You've already held up the show enough, Steve. Answer the fucking question or get banned. What is the point in what I said? People in the chat are literally telling you, Steve. People in the chat are literally telling you the correct answer right now. If you can't figure it out, you're not smart enough to be here. What was the point in what I just said? The entire chat voted to give you a second chance. You are now squandering that second chance because you weren't listening. So what is the point of the chat? Literally gave you the answer, bro. What is the point in what I just said? 30 seconds. And that's more time than I should be giving you if I'm being honest about it. Oh, sorry, Steve. That actually wasn't the point I just said. That was not it at all. So I'm sorry, Steve. You're now permanently banned from the chat because you couldn't answer what I said. And what I said is the left is kicking your ass and you don't seem to know it. And your answer is they will not win. They will win because you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And now you're permanently banned from my chat. Goodbye. Go away.
This commune. Yes, I think that I don't believe in, so some of the narratives that I've seen come out in queer and trans spaces are around like, oh, queer people are sacred, or like trans people are sacred, we're sacred beings. I don't believe in that. I don't think there are sacred beings. Like, I actually think we are all equally sacred, regardless of our relationship to transness. So there's a part of me that wants to answer that question of being like, oh, there, because queer and trans practices lead the way, there's this like emphasis. But actually, I think that it's really a future in which those practices just become the practices of the world, right? Like that those just become the modalities of like relationality, such that they're no longer visible as a separate entity necessarily. And that's, I know Michelle would have a lot to say if she was.
Hey, we got a super chat. Will my finger, bro, that is, I don't even know what to say about your handle. I'm not reading your handle though. You know who you are. I'm not reading that. Someone if you remember, I said Trump was going to use the overseas Antifa to declare them a terrorist organization. Glad I was right. Well, it's a good thing that none of the overseas Antifa organizations have anything to do with Antifa in the United States then, because literally none of the Antifa organizations that Trump declared an international terrorist organization, literally none of them have anything to do with what's going on in the United States. So Trump did something completely superfluous that is not going to end Antifa violence at all in the United States. But you guys are high-fiving each other. I mean, thanks for the money. But like, what, like, they literally nothing is going to happen because of that. You understand that, right?
Here, but it's also about projecting, like, you know, in the book, like gender is not fully, like everyone is vague, like gender is much less discernible in the book than it would be if it wasn't written into the future, right? So we're sort of moving towards this like radical horizon. But it's not fully gone. And there are people who are like trans and people who are supposedly not, as we see in the Kylo Pan chapter, which I think is something that Michelle and I had slightly different perspectives on. But I think the book is like, if we were to imagine another 100 years into that future, right, I would imagine that we'd be much closer to it, like a kind of a place where gender is primarily a place of play and expression, and where it exists, and it's situational for people as well, rather than a like stable identity, and that you wouldn't have that same, so it wouldn't, that centrality of like, queer and trans folks wouldn't look the same, right? It's like the centrality of the practice as opposed to the centrality of the identity. Does that make sense? I was kind of making it up as I went along.
I've been thinking a lot about, I was writing about this a while back, around the questions around like, if oral history is the mode of remembering, then especially trans bodies become the site of remembrance, and then that's like the locus of what those bodies have experienced, like what we've experienced, what we've been through, becomes part of the, you know, the formation through which memory can be developed. And like, I was kind of in dialogue with Ros Keaveney, who's an old friend of mine. She's in her 70s. She was involved in the GLF and in the 70s here, and also in feminists against censorship in the 90s, all this kind of stuff. She's also a writer. And you know, she was just like, oh, it's sometimes just about the random cells in your brain that you get to access again. And was talking a lot about how drug abuse in the 80s had really like affected a lot of trans people, especially like next to HIV/AIDS. And in that is the sense of like, okay, so what kind of body work, memory work, trauma work are we going through? And do we go through, do we need to, as part of like working through transness, living transness in the long term, entail that we're kind of invited to address, and then we often have to. And so I wonder if that's part of this, like, and that's not to say it's just about being transness, because it's also thinking about be that intergenerational memory around being like colonized, about colonization, about like in the present, and first, like as a, you know, as first gen, like, or as like people, in my case, like I'm Bengali, and like we're dealing with this, like we also have to deal with the silence around partition and these, and that's like part of how the intergenerational divides are constructed, and you have to both, like, there's like forms of respect around that, but also forms of questioning, and I know that I wonder if is something in the like the kinds of practices of memory and remembering through which we make sense of our existences and our histories and ourselves, maybe, and the things that we do, because none of those things are separated.
as well.
Yeah. And the possibilities that we had or didn't have.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's a certain empathy for yourself that you can have once you're able to contextualize your story and what was possible and what wasn't.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much, Eman, Nat. It's been a real pleasure, and thank you everyone who joined us as well. We will stop the webinar there, but we will be hopefully releasing a recording of it,
All right.
so people can watch it.
That's it. I feel like this was a very productive episode of Socialism Saturday. 1 in the chat if you learned something new tonight that you did not know about the far left. 2 in the chat if you knew all this shit already and you're just super smart and you didn't learn anything, but you had fun hanging out. 1 in the chat if you learned something new tonight that you didn't already know about the far left. 2 in the chat, you know, if you were just hanging out but you knew all this stuff already because you're super smart. Lots of ones. Lots of ones. All right. Awesome. Well done. Now, before we leave, Reagan wanted me to play. I've got a couple things. Reagan wanted me to play this song about mutual aid. And so does everyone want to hear the mutual aid song that Reagan wanted us to play? Let's see what happened. Let's see what this mutual aid song is. Let's see.
One of the organizers for today's rally, high school student Evan Greer.
This is Boston. That's Boston. That's on the Boston Common. I know that well.
$5 at the door. 6 kids, 7 bands, only 4 chords. Pass the hat to cover gas.
Boston. All of it.
Stop the war. $5 at the door. $5 at the door. At the local veterans are foreign wars. In the basements, in the warehouse, in the squats, in the bookstore. $5 at the door. $5 at the door. We were angry, we were hungry, we were bored. Making magic in the cracks between the cops and the landlords. $5 at the door. $5 at the door. To the problematic use is on. We said we were all the same, and we became what we deployed. $5 at the door. $5 at the door. When we were young and we were anxious and unsure, we knew what we were against, finding out what we were for. $5 at the door.
Awesome. Good find, Reagan. Good find indeed. Now, do you guys want, before we leave tonight, do you guys want a little bit of gossip? Now we dare, and we may still do protest coverage tonight, guys. I may take a little bit of a break and have a burrito and do some protest coverage. Chris, thank you. I just want to say thank you again for teaching me and all of us. You're doing great work. I'm trying. But before I go make a burrito, do you guys want a little bit of gossip? Do you guys want some gossip? Do you guys want to know exactly how cucked Enrique Tarrio has become? Do you guys want to know exactly how far Enrique Tarrio has fallen? You guys are going to love this, okay? You guys are going to love this. So for people who are new, I have a horde of unhinged retards who stalks every single thing I do online. And the leader of the horde of unhinged retards is a woman named Poetry Painter. And Poetry Painter likes to stalk everything I do online. $5 to the door. Thank you, C. Poetry Painter likes to stalk every single thing I do online, and then she complains about it. Now, Poetry Painter, it may look like Poetry Painter looks like this. Can you guys see that? That's her Twitter profile. In fact, this is what Poetry Painter actually looks like as she displayed on her Instagram. Not Instagram, Facebook. I'm sorry, Facebook. I pulled this off her Facebook because I do know her real name, because this crazy fat fucking bitch has been stalking me for over 5 years. So I know exactly who she is. But she still continues to do whatever she wants, and no one says anything about it except for us, and we make fun of her and stuff. Thank you, Bonfire Facilitation Payment. I appreciate that. So Jill has written a new article about me, and Jill is complaining about the fact that I think that people should really promote this Be Queer Do Terrorism manifesto. And let me just clue you in on the mentality of conservative losers. Because I'm like, guys, here is a queer Marxist manifesto called Be Queer Do Terrorism. Do you guys maybe want to talk about how the far left militants are telling people literally to do terrorism? And by the way, I want to thank everyone. The article on Twitter now has well over 100,000 views. It's up to 102,000 views. Thank you to the people who shared it on the show. That's up 10,000 views just on this show, which is awesome. So I have been pointing out correctly that conservative media is not sharing this with their audience. And so she wrote a whole article saying, what kind of person thinks that she's owed promotion and support from people she's lied about and attacked? So the conservative brain trust of the internet thinks that people should not be informed that there is a manifesto out there called Be Queer Do Terrorism that is literally telling people to do terrorism because people have feelings about Karlyn and they don't like Karlyn and no one should promote her and blah, 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 blah. And it's this whole long fucking article. She makes AI art about me. Look at that's supposed to be me. She's jealous that she doesn't have sick eyeliner game and it smokes weed on the internet apparently because she's making AI art of me doing that. And so she wrote this whole fucking article, literally, with a picture of me smoking a joint. That's a real picture. That's a fake picture. This one was real though. Anyway, my point is this. Again, let us remember, this is the woman who wrote this article. Okay, that's her. That's her right there. That's what she looks like. Let's go back to the article. I want to show you just how far Enrique Tarrio has fallen. If we go into the article, view article engagement, go to the reposts, Enrique Tarrio is so fucked up about the fact that I bent him over and fucked him on his own show. Enrique Tarrio shared that article alongside with the good Christian Carrie Smith. And the retard that hit me in Portland, the actual retard that actually physically hit me in Portland apparently commented on it. I didn't look at that part. So this is, I really just want to point this out. This is who the leader of the Proud Boys is in bed with now. This is who the leader of the Proud Boys is in bed with now. This is the new information provider to the leader of the Proud Boys. And I just want to point that out because oh, how the Proud Boys have fallen. Oh, how the Proud Boys have fallen. It's really sad, honestly, because I used to there were times in my life when I hung out with Proud Boys members, and like in 2020, the Proud Boys were fucking awesome in 2020, and I genuinely enjoyed hanging out with the Proud Boys in 2020. They were awesome. Oh, how the Proud Boys have fallen, that the leader of the Proud Boys is using this as his source of information now. Oh, how the Proud Boys have fallen. The Proud Boys should be fucking ashamed. James D, thank you. Great class. Small payment for the amount of effort you put into providing the material for us. Hey, James D, I think that. Thank you for that. That's awesome. So, I just had to show you that because that is who Enrique Tarrio is getting his information from. That is who Enrique Tarrio is promoting on Twitter. And the only reason that is true is because I bent Enrique Tarrio over and I fucked him on his own show live on the internet, because Enrique Tarrio thought that he was just going to be able to walk all over me, but he had no idea what he was dealing with, because I don't know, he must be out of practice. He was in jail for a while, so I don't know, but and in the meantime, it seems that about 102,000 people think it is actually important to share a manifesto from radical, violent, queer militants calling to be queer, do terrorism. So I'm pretty sure I won this little fight. I'm pretty sure I won, because 100,000 people is like a lot of people. And if you want to support the work I'm doing, head over to the Substack. That is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. You can read the full Be Queer, Do Terrorism manifesto on the Substack right now if you feel like doing so. If you want to support the work, sign up for $8 a month, $80 a year. You guys keep me in business. Thank you for allowing me to do what I do. I really do appreciate it, guys. I'm going to go take a little break, and then I may be back for terrorism coverage. I may be back for protest coverage in a little bit. I'm just going to go eat a burrito, and it's going to be a chili burrito, and it's going to be really like spicy, but also really good, because chili burritos are awesome. I'm going to go eat a burrito, and then we'll see what's going on in Portland tonight. Does that sound like a plan? Everyone, 1 in the chat if you want me to come back and do protest coverage tonight. 2 in the chat if you want to go to bed or do something else that's far more exciting. 1 in the chat if you want to see me do protest coverage tonight. 2 in the chat if you don't care. Okay. All right. Let me go get some food. I will be back a little bit later. Okay. Thank you guys for hanging out. Great Socialism Saturday. Appreciate everyone. Reagan, you can go to bed. You are excused. Appreciate you guys. I'll see you in a little bit. Okay.
How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.